I'm going to call the meeting to order. Lisa, Orca, Spencer, everybody ready? Okay. So it's 6:17. Welcome everybody to our Washington Central Unified Union School District School Board meeting. We appreciate your engagement. We have quite a few people. My computer is still coming up, but I can see from Stephen's computer that we have about 31 people that have joined us, and that includes some of us that are logged in right now. I didn't have the opportunity to do this at the last meeting, and since we just reorganized, just remind ourselves about our norms. So I'm not gonna read all our norms, but just go quickly. So we'll just try to take a minute to remind not just the board, but the community. So we aim to start on time. We had a meeting before, so we're about a minute late, but thank you for your understanding. And thank you for helping us stay in track, because it takes each other, right? It's not just one person. We're committed to hearing all voices, both on the board and in the community. Every board member will have the opportunity to speak, and we strive to ensure full representation on any topic that we're talking about. As a board, we're focused on our policymaking and oversight role, and we work in partnership with the leadership team who manages the district operations. We do not manage the district operations. We practice respectful dialogue, and we listen and assume positive intentions and stay present with one another. Tonight, as always, we will have time for public comment at the beginning and at the end of the meeting. If we have too many people for public comment, we usually say 2 minutes per person. If we don't have too many people, we have 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting, and however needed at the end of the meeting, usually 15 minutes too. And that is just to make sure that we hear from as many people as possible. So we kindly ask you to stay to that limit when that is necessary. We are, as a board, we're committed to being inclusive and focused on being solution-oriented and to being here for one another. So with that, I'm gonna start the meeting. I see that we have some of our board members have joined us remotely. When you join us, turn on your camera. I see you, Diane, so that I know that you're already here, so I make sure that I'm paying attention in case you're raising your hand during the meeting. And if you don't want to be on camera the whole time, please put a comment on the chat when you have a question. Any adjustments to the agenda? I don't see any. We are gonna do a small adjustment to the agenda, and we're gonna move is the final count for our student representative here. She's got a lot to do today, so we're gonna move the student report to be the first thing in our agenda today, after public comments, of course. So if you have a public comment for something that you see, how do we sign up for public comment? I see a comment. Just raise your hand. You don't need to sign up. Just raise your hand, and you'll be able to. Sorry, I was just looking at online, but I see you both. And then just say your name, your town, and you can go ahead and do a public comment. I'm gonna start with the two people here with us, because I see people are still trying to figure it out online, and then I'll move to online. Please say your name and what town you are.
My name is Jo Fratt Elms. I live in Middlesex. And I have been a teacher at Turtle Island Children's Center for 8 years. And I just wanted to show my support for the merging Turtle Island and the collaboration. I'm really excited for the opportunity. I think it's really positive.
Thank you.
My name is Phoebe Stone. I live in East Montpelier, and I am also with Turtle Island. And I just wanted to express excitement for this potential collaboration, and just give a little background to Turtle Island was given notice of termination of tenancy at our current location effective June 30th of this year. So we've been scrambling to find a new location for us, and we were really excited to start talking with Stephen about the possibility of using one or more of the elementary schools in the area. And we're just really excited about this opportunity and see it as a potential model for the future as schools continue to be under-enrolled. So we're really excited.
Thank you. I'm going to move to people online right now, and I see several hands up. I'm going to start with Sam. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sam Mishkit. I live in Montpelier, but I work at U32 Middle School, and I have one kid in Turtle Island right now. She's having an amazing experience, and I'm hoping to have 3 more kids there next fall. And I can't, I'm so happy to have found Turtle Island. It was very hard to find childcare at all, and I'm expecting twins in June, and for them to have 2 spots for those babies is amazing. I wouldn't be able to continue working without Turtle Island, so I am in full support of this. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Perry?
Hi, my name is Perry Bello-Hanselman. I live in North Middlesex. I have a daughter that's at Turtle Island and an infant that'll be starting at Turtle Island in the fall, hopefully, if we can find a spot. I'm also a teacher at Montpelier High School. And I'm also asking you all to support this proposal, this collaboration between the schools. I, as just a North Middlesex resident, was so excited when I first heard about this, about the idea of my kids being able to have childcare so close to home and close to our community where our friends also send their children to go to school. And the idea that in the future, our kids will be, there'll be childcare in that area to support the North Middlesex and Worcester and that the surrounding areas around where we live, that those kids could then transition together to Doty and Rumney is really wonderful. And, like others, the stress of childcare has led our family, honestly, to really question if we can stay in central Vermont long term. It's been very, very, very challenging. So that includes both being able to live here and being able to continue to work in the schools. I have many other friends who are teachers who have really struggled with having childcare, full-time childcare that works for teachers on our schedule. So it would be such a loss to lose Turtle Island and such a wonderful thing if we could make this happen. So thank you for considering it.
Thank you so much for your comments, Barry. Then we have, I'm just going by the hands as they were raised up, and I do see Becca Gentle. We have a lot of Beccas in the room today. Your comment, I'm going to let you go first, and then I'm going to move to you, Becca Mandel.
So
me,
Becca
Becca
Gentile.
first?
Yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead.
thank you. Yeah, sorry, I don't know where the hand raise function went. I usually can find it. But I also just wanted to express my support for Turtle Island. I have children at Turtle Island, and I am on the board of directors. And I, again, just want to echo how critical early childhood education is in a kid's development. And more studies are showing us how important it is for children to have early childhood experiences that are rich in language and exploration and things like that. And Turtle Island does an amazing job. So I think it would be a huge asset to the community.
Thank you, Becca. Becca, your turn now.
Hi, everyone. I have no idea what's happening with Turtle Island, but I'm so intrigued. Can't wait to hear more, as long as it's, I don't know, and as long as it's not closing Doty. But anyway, I wanted to talk about if we're putting early education in the existing school buildings and still sending the elementary school kids there. I love this. But I want to talk about going into the week of the 23rd and 24th for school this year. I know that we've had a bunch of snow days, but I also know that there might be some discretion. And for those of us who are trying to juggle childcare for our elementary school age kids, we had to make decisions about camps already. And so I know teachers are tired, so if we could not go into the week of the 23rd and 24th, I think it would be a gift to all of us. And if there's any room for discretion there, I would really be grateful. So that is my That's my comment for today.
Thank you, Becca. Now, Allison Burns, sorry.
Thanks, Stephen. Hi, my name is Allison Burns. I live in East Montpelier, and I'm a high school math teacher at U32. I'm a parent to 3 children. Our oldest is at East Montpelier Elementary, and our 3-year-old and 1-year-old attend Turtle Island. I just want to share with my board my support for the district renting space to Turtle Island at Doty. With the expanded childcare bill, we now receive childcare subsidy, which is amazing and a huge help. But daycare spots in Central Vermont, especially at daycares that accept subsidy, are already essentially impossible to find, especially for a 1-year-old. It will be even more difficult to find care if Turtle Island closes, and we are all competing for even fewer available spots. If Turtle Island closes, we will not have daycare for our younger 2 children. We have no backup plan. My husband and I both work outside of the home, and I don't want to have to leave the classroom, but one of us would have to leave the workforce to care for our kids. At U32, we have already had trouble the past 2 years filling long-term sub positions for math teachers. We need Turtle Island to remain open to provide consistent, high-quality care so that our school community can continue functioning smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Lila Richardson?
Yeah, excuse me, Lila Richardson. I live in Worcester. I just wanted to say, I know that the board is going to be talking about the proposal for the lease with Turtle Island, and I'm not suggesting in any way that I'm opposed to it. I do believe that childcare is important in Central Vermont. I think we have a real lack of information that's causing a lot of concern in the community about how this will work. And I guess I'm asking the board to consider doing something like a Q&A after presentation that Stephen gives so that we can ask questions that aren't covered and get answers quickly. So that's it.
Thank you, Lila. Next is Kimberly.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Yeah, my name is Kim McKee. I'm a Calais resident. I have 2 girls that currently are at Turtle Island, and I wanted to express support for this proposal for Turtle Island leasing space at Doty. I've been so grateful to have my 2 kids enrolled there. It's absolutely an amazing environment for childcare. It's, before we landed in childcare centers at around like 15 and 18 months for our kids, it was very difficult to find care. The wait lists are long, so it was a big stressor for our family, kind of patching things together. I have colleagues who work at the state of Vermont who are on wait lists now. Their home-based provider they've been with is closing this summer. That's been a trend in Calais in the past few years. A few home-based care providers for early or small kiddos have closed. And this solution just seems like a really natural fit to co-locate early child care with our public school system. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly. Caitlin?
Hi, I'm a resident. I have a second grader at Doty and have a current pre.
Caitlin, your internet is really spotty. Maybe you want to turn your camera off, or it might be just your earbuds. Go ahead. Oops.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah, it's better. Yes.
So I'm Caitlin Hawansky. I am a Worcester resident. I have a second grader at Doty, and I have a pre-K student at Rumney under the current configuration. I am also a member of the waitlist at Turtle Island and have been for several years. So I certainly understand the need for childcare in Central Vermont. I'm hoping that today we hear some definitive answer about pre-K students for Worcester residents in particular. And I have great concerns about the fact that there will be essentially 2 drop-offs for many families with this configuration where 5th and 6th grade moves to Rumney, because right now I'm doing the double drop-off and it's certainly not easy, and it is a real problem in terms of childcare because you cannot be in 2 places at once. So I hope that the board recognizes that and addresses it. And I would love to know what's happening with pre-K, as I've been asking regularly at board meetings over and over again. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Tracy. Tracy, can you hear me? You can unmute. Okay, let's hold Tracy for a minute and, oh,
Hi, I'm so sorry. I was right in the middle of doing dishes and trying to clean up from dinner myself. Hi,
sorry.
everyone. My name is Tracy Sudhalter. I have a daughter who is a student at Callis Elementary. I also have a son, 1-year-old, who's at Turtle Island. My family moved to Vermont 4 years ago, and it took us 2 years to get childcare on many wait lists. And I'm here again, like many of the other parents here tonight, just to say, I think it would be super helpful to see the Turtle Island plan move forward. Obviously, it'd be really devastating to a whole lot of families if Turtle Island closed and they don't find a location. And again, it's not just the families who are at Turtle Island, it's also all the families on the wait list who are hoping to get places too. So I hope there's some real serious consideration about making it happen and hope to see it move forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Lauren?
Hi, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My name is Lauren Chabot, and I am a Worcester resident with a first grader and fourth grader. And I completely hear the need for early education. It was certainly a huge stressor when my children were young. I will say that this afternoon, learned that my fourth grade student will be moved to Rumney next year due to the fact that Doty will have space leased to this private entity, Turtle Island. As a community member and a parent, I feel very blindsided by this decision. While I recognize it's completely within the right of the school board to move grades as you wish, my trust in the board's desire to be transparent and have open lines of communication is diminished. I won't spend my time rattling off the list of items that my son is already mourning about not getting 2 more years in the community that he is so much a part of. In the letter to families that we received at 4:30 this afternoon, we were told that larger classrooms and greater social connection are one of the benefits to this move. I'm not sold. He is already in a large classroom of 19 students. He has amazing social connections with the peers and teachers he's built relationships with over the past 6 years. Please just be honest about the rationale for this decision. Please don't sugarcoat it. The board has heard from families this year, as Caitlin mentioned, about the challenges of having students in 2 different elementary schools. Clearly, those challenges and concerns were not truly heard. I certainly hope that as part of this deal, pre-K students will once again return to Doty and ease this burden for families with very young children. I would also like to note the particular burden for Doty's rising 6th graders. They will need to transition to a new school next year to Rumney, and then yet another new school when they move on to U32 the following year. No other students in the districts will experience this level of disruption in their academic experience as a result of the decisions of the school board. Finally, moving forward, I would like transparency as to why not all elementary schools in our district were offered as potential locations for Turtle Island. And I would like transparency regarding any plans the district has to move 6th grade to U32 in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next up is Marissa. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marissa Melamed. I live in Montpelier. My son Asher lives in Montpelier and in Middlesex, and I'm calling in today to show my support for the partnership between Turtle Island and Doty. Turtle Island's an incredible program, and it's, as you can hear as I'm listening to everybody, and people I interact with on a daily basis, childcare is a significant stressor, and any way we can work together as community to ease that for everyone involved. I just urge us to work really hard on that together. And I agree with the previous commenter about as much transparency as possible will help ease that. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Marissa. Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Hanna from Worcester. I currently have a 2nd grader and 5th grader. at Doty. Like Lauren and other Worcester residents, I also received the letter this afternoon letting us know that if this plan, the partnership with Turtle Island, were to move forward, Worcester 5th and 6th graders next year would be going to Rumney. Given the timeline, right, that we're in the middle of April in a school year, my request tonight, I have some concerns, but I just also would like some transparency. So my request would be that tonight there's specific information given about what the district is thinking on how to support our students in that transition. If Worcester students are going to be moved to Rumney, we have 2 months left in the school year. We've talked in all of our configuration conversations about if and when these changes happen, that our kids would be supported in that transition. And we don't have much time. So I would like to hear from admin about what the plan would be to support our students in that transition. I also am concerned, as Lauren stated, about our 5th and 6th graders having 2 transitions in 2 or 3 years. That's a lot. And so again, how is the district planning to support our students in that? And then finally, I would request that we hear some information about what transportation would look like for our Worcester students. And if we don't have that information today, what would those bus routes look like? When will we get that information? Because again, it is April. This is a lot for families to think about 2 months before the end of the school year, and to prepare and support their students. So I would really request that we hear that information from admin, or the board ask those questions to admin so that that conversation can happen before the school year gets away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Mr. Noah.
Hi, Noah Weinstein, Worcester resident. I first wanted to say that I very much understand the need for early childhood education. We run a home daycare ourselves in Worcester, and my wife has a very long waiting list, so I can understand the need to relocate Turtle Island. I, on the one hand, want to reiterate my support for returning the Doty pre-K kids to Worcester. And having, if there's some creative way to be able to have a collaboration between Turtle Island and Doty so that we can actually have all the little kids in one place, that would be amazing. It is sort of, there was a conversation previously about community schools and having the different ages in the same building being able to support and grow together is a very strong component of my version of community schools. The second question is sort of more logistical, which is how many children from the current Turtle Island will actually fit at Doty under this new configuration? So is all of Turtle Island going to fit in essentially half of Doty, or is Turtle Island going to be kind of splitting its campus in 2, or are some kids not going to be able to come back? So that's just a question I have, and I think it relates to a concern of sort of what a friend mentioned, sort of a concern about death by 1,000 cuts, meaning is this sort of a stepping stone towards, okay, so Turtle Island gets half the building this year, and then, they need more of the building next year. And so just sort of some more clarity on, is this sort of how much of the building will get leased to Turtle Island, or is this just one step in sort of further moves to close Doty? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Caitlin, I see, is that a new hand as we
It is.
move
I
forward?
promise it's very brief. It's just while people from Turtle Island are here. Should this move forward, I just want to point out that as Route 12 comes into Worcester, we have a blind hill right before the start of the village. And I live at the top of that hill, and I very regularly almost get rear-ended because people are not coming into town at the appropriate speed. So should this move ahead, I just would love for the Turtle Island community could respect those speed limits, because we are a dense village and people do walk around. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, I don't see any other hands. Is there any hands here? No? All right, so we're gonna move into our meeting, and we're gonna get us started with the best part of the meeting, which is our student report. Welcome, Linnea. It's not on.
I thought I just, oh.
No, you're
okay.
good.
I had it on the whole meeting. Okay, so I know that Lay is also online, so he is here with us, he's listening. So I'm gonna start with a little bit of the report that I missed because I wasn't here last meeting. So I don't know that much about this personally because I didn't take this, but some students took a VCAP and youth behavior survey, which was, I believe, asking questions about like just their experience with home life and school life and how they're being supported and things like that. And then also my favorite topic, spring sports are starting up and preseason was going on strong. Now we're in the thick of it. And then also there is a period product drive going on, which was set up by U32's Feminist Club and Affinity Group for People of Marginalized Gender Identities. And all that is collected is being donated to nonprofits across the state, which is awesome. And then also our Stage 16, which is our middle school version of Stage 32, is presenting Monty Python's Spam-A-Lot, which is going to be great if nobody's heard about that. And then also students are signing up for classes and making plans for next school year. So that's basically everybody. So that's exciting. And then stuff that's more recent is the U32 Spring Craft Fair happened on the 5th, which was 11 days ago. Our 8th graders participated in a hands-only CPR class recently, which is super cool and super important. And then as I mentioned, spring sports are starting up and doing great. We have boys and girls lacrosse games. Both teams recently crushed Spalding, I would just like to point out. Girls softball games and boys softball games, which are also awesome. And then track meets. I believe we had a middle school track meet earlier today, which was quite busy. So that's awesome. Everybody's doing great. That's the student part.
Could I add to, so we also have two student groups that are traveling right now, one to Peru and one to France for school trips right now. So
I have a bunch of friends on the Peru trip and they're having fun already.
Any questions for Nina? When is the stage 16?
you need to.
Oh, when is the stage 16?
Yeah,
It was last week.
week. Yeah. Okay. I missed the mark because I didn't talk about it last meeting. It was pretty cool.
All right. Okay, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Lei, for joining us too. We're thinking of you. All right, now let's move into the superintendent report and central.
Yeah, I think it's one of the parts that we think that we've been waiting for. So I want to start off by saying I recognize that people feel like information hasn't been shared a great deal. We did keep the board we were talking to Turtle Island. There is no decision that the board has to make tonight around leases or anything like that. We want to make sure that you have some information and that if there's additional questions that we make sure that we get those answered. And I heard several of those from the community, and I think that I can verbally answer some of those questions as well, and we can get that into a document to help us. I would just say that the reason the timeline feels like, oh my gosh, is we didn't know until last week if the building would actually work for Turtle Island because we still had visits from the fire marshal and things like that. So we are as of last Friday, we're at a point where we can say pretty definitively that Doty has space that can be used for Turtle Island. And we have a proposal around how that might look. And so we're ready to have our attorneys work on a lease agreement that the board would then have to approve, which would be the process that we would have for us. So one of the things that we saw when we got approached by Turtle Island, asking if we had space available, was we saw an opportunity to think of our schools in a new way and in a new model, particularly as how can we do early childcare, so really from infant, and where we can move it within our buildings. What would it look like if we put it into our buildings, right? So an infant to early childhood education. And so the proposal that we really have is that we would like to use 5 of the classrooms. If you're familiar with Doty, Doty actually has kind of a doorway between 5 of their classrooms and the library and 3 of their other classrooms. That doorway is a really important feature because it allows us to separate a space between Turtle Island and the Doty School. What it would require for us to be able to lease 5 classrooms to them, it would require us to move the 5th and 6th grade. We notified staff this afternoon. Gillian sent a message to families. We're going to meet with families tomorrow evening to try to answer some of their questions and do all that. And we can also, in the future provide an opportunity for a full community forum that Turtle Island will be at as well, to be able to answer questions from their perspective. And so we are right at the moment where all this came together for us to be able to do. And so moving the 5th, 6th classroom to Rumney would mean that there would be a full 5th grade classroom and a full 6th grade classroom. Those classrooms would be 20 to 21 kids in each of those classrooms. So we're not talking about creating an overcrowding. That fits within our class size requirements. And we realize too is that that's a huge transition for us, right? And we heard that from our community, people who have children that will be in the 5th and 6th grade next year. And so the Doty teachers, Gillian, we're working this afternoon on what will we do to support those students. And the teacher of the current 5th, 6th grade classroom is, how does she help support that transition as well? So that we can make sure that we have a soft landing for those kids as they do that. And then also, what are some of the activities that we need to do between now and the end of the year to bring those two groups of kids together, those that are at Rumney and those that are at Doty, who will be creating kind of a new classroom experience. We've also heard in the past from members of the Worcester community is, how do we get more activities that are jointly happening between Doty and Rumney? This is a great opportunity for us to dig deeper into that. And so I just wanted to address those at first. Another concern that I've heard is that what about the other schools, were they considered? So we considered every one of the elementary schools at the very beginning, and in our discussions with Turtle Island, which schools fit the best model for that. So East Montpelier and Rumney were considered. Their layouts and their student count and their student bodies right now didn't lend it to enough space for Turtle Island. And I don't want to speak for Turtle Island fully, but we don't have enough space in any building to provide them with enough space for their programming. They are having to look elsewhere for some of their programming, which is why we also looked at Berlin and Calais and actually did visits to those schools with the Turtle Island people to see, would these work? Berlin's layout is a little problematic for us. It's more of an open school floor plan. It makes it very difficult because we have to have a physical barrier between our programs because they would not be a school program. They are a private entity that would be leasing space, and so that barrier is pretty important. Calais, promise, there's some potential there, and it's not immediate. So the other piece of this that I would say is that as we were looking at schools and we were talking to Turtle Island, the model that we can start at Doty is a model that we might be able to replicate in some of our other schools over time. We're just in kind of an immediate need based on their timeline more than ours. And I would also say that in deference to some of the other programs that exist in our communities, Turtle Island may not be the only organization that we as a district consider partnering with around these kinds of services. And that's nothing against Turtle Island in this remark. It's just they have a specific type of program that all of our community members may not necessarily see as the kind of programming that they want. And so we might be able to do some of these partnerships with other organizations that provide a diversity of childcare options in the future. I will say that just getting one of these programs set up will be a pretty big task for all of us, particularly in the time frame that we're looking at. And then I would also say, to answer the other big concern, is we want the pre-K and K students to be in their communities. And so we're working with Turtle Island about what would that look like for pre-K programming, because we only have a few students that would be attending the Doty program, and what kind of options can we work with them around our students being able to be there in the community, or giving them options for any other of our buildings as well. We can possibly give our families options. We haven't fully worked that out, but I would say that our goal right now is to keep pre-K with their communities, if at all possible. So Callis kids in Callis, East Montpelier kids in East Montpelier. Can we open up some spaces? We're really, I had actually, and remember, sometimes we just need to talk about things. I had asked my team to look at how do we expand our pre-K opportunities across the entire district. And what we felt was that's a big task between now and next year, and probably more than we could bite off. And we really didn't come to the board around the budgeting associated with that kind of move. But it is a great place for us to look at as part of our configuration process as to what kind of programming are we offering to our communities, or what kind of space can we provide to other entities. And I'm going to throw in one other little piece here as we're thinking about the broadening of how our school buildings might be used. We've also been approached by an elder care organization that's asking for some of the same things. What kind of space might we have in our community? I think these, based upon what I've seen from our community and heard in the communications that we've had, is that anything we can do to use our buildings more fully for some of these other community organizations is probably one of our better options in the way that we're considering how we keep our schools vibrant and active parts of their local community. And with that, I would say there is no desire from administration. There's been no request of Turtle Island, and I don't think, from what I know of the board, but I don't want to speak for you, there is no desire to close Doty as a result of moving Turtle Island there. In fact, we think it would be a more vibrant community if we had a greater range of students that were there. And so from the early childhood through the 4th grade is what we see as being a very possible, very reasonable number of kids to be there. I'll address one other thing, which was transportation, which is, I agree, a concern. I think that one of the things that we need, there's 2 pieces to this. One is we might have to look at our start and end times for the schools and adjust them slightly so that we can do better with our transportation for our families if they want to pick up, but also for our own transportation. And I've asked our bus company and our scheduler, the person who works for us, to look at what happens if we stop thinking about running a bus that is just for Worcester and a bus that's just for or 2 buses that are just for Middlesex. What happens if we talked about using 3 buses in that region and figuring out how we might be able to pick up kids and drop off kids? Because one of the things that we need to make sure of is that if our 5th and 6th graders from Worcester need transportation, we're obligated to provide that. That's not a question for us, that's just how do we design our bus routes to be able to do that, because we're the ones asking them to make that change, and we've also committed to providing transportation for our students. And so I know that there are a lot of little details. The list that was started at Doty this afternoon, because they just learned about that, is, oh my goodness, we've got to move some classrooms around. We need to talk about, how we rearrange some of our scheduling. Yes, all kinds of things that they're going to address. And I will also add one last final piece around staffing. We're not eliminating any staff as a result of this. We may have to move a staff member. That person has been spoken to. And we may have to change a little bit of the schedule for some of the people who are shared between buildings. But this actually doesn't add a classroom to the district. It actually reduces one of our classrooms. And I would just say that we have openings in the district right now. We'll work with anybody who could be displaced to make sure that they have a position. We provided them with a contract already, so their position within the district is guaranteed. We see no reason to reduce that. And Gillian, you'll need a microphone if you're going to say something. But
I do just want to respond to a couple of the questions that came out. One of the things that has weighed heavily on me is the fact that this feels very late in the year and this is rapid, and that does weigh heavy. And in a perfect world, I would love to have been able to have a whole year plotting with Turtle Island or a child care entity, because it really is an opportunity to really, I think, be leaders in the state around how we conceptualize early education. But all that said, what I have to say is once sort of the initial surprise wore off at the Doty staff meeting today, the first thing that I heard about was, what about our 4th and 5th graders? How are we going to do this transition? How are we going to take care of our children? How are we going to hold, I'm going to get a little weepy, but how are we going to hold them and support them with this transition, which we know is huge. And that is where we're going to be okay. There were some like, oh my God, we're going to have to clean our closets. And there's a lot of stuff in there. And how are we going to support the kids? So we are going to be talking with the kids tomorrow morning. And then there's the meeting that's really designed. I'm not trying to cut out the Worcester community. I will be sending out a copy of the letter that I sent families to the larger Worcester community. But I really want to focus on the Doty larger family at tomorrow night's meeting, because it's really about addressing who is most directly impacted. On my way over here, I was able to text some with Caroline, who presented it to the Rumney staff today. And the exact same thing happened over at Rumney, and that was that first people were like, whoa, where did this come from? And then the second response was, oh my God, how are we going to do this transition? How are we going to support the kids? People are already spitballing ideas about get-togethers and ways to support these children, because we do recognize that this is an unexpected shift for a group of kids. And so I want to just say to the board and to the people who asked, it is in the front of our minds. We'll figure out the closets later, but really getting the kids taken care of is where we're at and where the Rumney staff is at.
We have a couple of questions from our students. I'm going to let Lay go up, that had his hand up. Welcome, Lay.
Hi. So for people who don't know who I am Lay Jigru, and I am a student representative. I just have current medical needs to be taken care of. But so listening in on the meeting, I just had one question for Stephen about what we're talking about here with Doty and Turtle Island together. So I'm just slightly confused about why in a lease agreement we would lease the 5 rooms to Turtle Island and leave 3 rooms for Doty Elementary, but yet have multiple grades still. When Doty as a mass in population would be greater than Turtle Island, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Lay. It is so wonderful to see you and have you participate in this. And I would say that I think the total number between the two organizations would be pretty close to each other. However, the requirements for space for the infants is very different than the requirements for space for a 3rd and 4th grader. We would still at Doty have the kindergarten class, the 1-2 class, and the 3-4 class be able to meet there. And I know you didn't hear pre-K, but we're working on pre-K with Turtle Island because we only have a couple of pre-K kids.
No? Yeah, so, but like, sorry, kind of to that, it just, in a way, from it, I know like we have those requirements, and those requirements are good because it keeps us where we want to be. But it makes people like me ask, are we in a way prioritizing childhood education over our older children, and are we trying to, in a way, nudge out Doty? I know you mentioned that you don't want us to close Doty and stuff, but it kind of feels that way when you mention it, especially as a Worcester resident.
Yep, I hear you, and I could understand why that would be true. Remember that we can't make these decisions without the board choosing to sign a lease with Turtle Island. We can't make decisions to close the school without voters. And I would also say that I have heard time and time again that that's not what our communities desire. And I hope that people know that from the minute that I've heard that, back when the board decided not to do that, I have not pushed for it, nor as the superintendent do I intend to push for it. I think we need to come up with other options and other solutions. This is one of those options that might be really good for us to explore, not just for Doty, but across the district for some of our students. If we remember correctly in our configuration conversations, we had talked about an early learning center at one point in time as being Berlin, and for various reasons that did not and could not work for our communities. But we, at a smaller scale across the district, at a couple of our schools, we could provide this kind of opportunity. And I think that the idea was there. Now the way is, how do we implement it? And I would just go on. I don't want to speak for Turtle Island in this, but their waiting list, and we heard from Noah that his his family's waiting list. There is no shortage of people who need childcare right now. And so I don't think that we're going to be displacing any other childcare. And if we as a district can work on these partnerships long-term, we could come up with some good solutions to make sure that our communities still have our kids in them. Granted that we are asking to move the 5th and 6th grade. I don't want to dismiss that. But also, how do we set up our schools so that maybe we do have a couple of early learning centers and have opportunities for our kids to be, greater social interactions, bigger classes, maybe some of those things that we can work on as well. A lot of this is coming quickly because of our timelines, but I do think that our goal is to keep Doty open. And I would just stress, the Doty side of the building would still include the gym and the library and the main office spaces as well. So we retain some of our other spaces, and we'll be able to use those as well. I will say that we might have some joint use of the gym with Turtle Island, but we can work those details out.
Lina, thank you. You have a question?
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to reiterate and kind of make a comment, but I'm going to preface this by saying I know it might not mean anything at this point because I wasn't at the last meeting or whatever, but 5th and 6th grade is really important in Doty, and we just have a lot of, and I know it might be too late, but we just have a lot of traditions that we do that are just so important, and I'm feeling very emotional today, so I might start crying, but it would just be good to keep that in mind and try and maintain some of those traditions if that's possible.
Yeah, I see this as an opportunity to introduce some of the Rumney kids to the Doty traditions as well, and let them be back where, there are some events that happen at Doty that we need to make sure that those kids are coming back with their new friends to that and being able to participate in some of those events. And I think this is a good chance for us to say, how do we build a stronger culture between our communities? And not say that it's one community that has to go and just be a part of the other, but how do we blend them so that so that students are experiencing what each other would have experienced, right?
Thank you, Lina. Ursula, you have a question? Oh, Julia.
Stephen, I don't know if you answered this question or not earlier. You said that you think it's important for our youngest children to remain in pre-K programs in their own communities. Would a Worcester child need to be enrolled at Turtle Island to be part of the pre-K program at Doty?
We haven't worked out the details of that yet, but we have students who are already a part of Turtle Island that are members of our district. So we haven't worked out the details of what that would look like, but that's where we would want our kids to be in pre-K. As I said, there are 3 students that we know of that would be in pre-K in the Worcester community right
Who
now.
are not enrolled in Turtle Island at the moment? Is that what you're saying?
I don't believe that they are, no.
It would be important, I think, for all pre-K age students in Worcester to be able to attend pre-K at Doty, whether or not they're part of Turtle Island. That's really critical, I think.
But I think that's what you were saying. So
I think it's a detail that we need to work out exactly what it looks like. What I'm saying is having a pre-K class that's for 3 kids is not what we're looking at doing, right?
No.
Right. So that's, but being a part of a pre-K program with Turtle Island is what we would be looking to do.
Without being enrolled at Turtle Island for the rest of the day is my question.
That would be up to the family to determine, because our pre-K programs aren't full day in any spot in the district right now.
Okay.
Right? So that would be a family's determination. If they wanted to extend their time with, I think what would be helpful is just to, I can't do it right this minute, is to bring you what does our pre-K programming look like across the district? Because our families don't have full day pre-K, they have part day pre-K and part day community connections. And just helping the board understand what it would look like at each of the schools, I think would be a good, quite honestly, this was one of the hardest things for me to figure out when I first became a superintendent. So I think bringing it to board to show you would be a good part of this process.
We have Diane.
Well, didn't you say Ursula had her hand up as well? So.
No, she was helping, yeah, I hadn't seen, so go ahead, Diane.
So, first off, I mean, as a board member, I knew these discussions were going on, but I want to be very open to this is hitting us from, I mean, I'm blindsided by the fact that it appears as though a decision has been made and it's, we're being told two things. The board is the one who's going to make this decision and we will have additional information. But then we're also being told that letters have gone out, these conversations are going to be being had. And so it's a little bit surprising to me. I also want to say I'm in the field of early care and education, so I absolutely value it and understand it, but we're being put kind of in this position. I also understand the timing. I guess what surprises me is why I'm wondering why we didn't have a group that designed the parameters of when these tours were happening, this is how we would know it would be a space that would work, and this would be how we would know a space would not work. It worries me to hear that, yes, while that space at Worcester works, you're saying 5 classrooms. And I guess I don't know that as a board member, if we had said, okay, let's brainstorm what we say would be an amenable location or something that we would agree would be a space we could use. I don't know that we would have said if a request or a need for the majority of the rooms in a building would be used. And so even in a generic sense, and in the long run, yes, we want to have more collaborations and work. But this just really concerns me because I don't really feel like I have a good handle on. One of the questions was, is this going to help them be at their full capacity? Is it not? What is the additional needs? And the trauma that for the community, that once again, it feels like we as a board are not being transparent when I think as board members, we're learning this as well today in terms of the details. We knew these conversations were happening. So I'm hoping that there is more detail that can be shared in terms of what Turtle Island would be anticipating would be their numbers that they would be able to use in those 5 rooms if they used them. What would be the level of infrastructure within those 5 rooms that they would need to do potentially? If they're really going to be open, what is the capacity and cost for families as well who would be using it? What does the traffic pattern look like for drop off and pickup for all those programs? And then what this also means long-term wise for this, because it sounds to me as though, yes, the board makes the final decision on the lease, but it doesn't sound to me like we are part of any of the discussion in terms of how we got to this point.
Okay, Zach, you have a question, otherwise I want to answer some of this, but I'll let you go.
I had more of a comment. Do you want to finish
Okay,
the question
go ahead,
before
go ahead.
comments?
It's okay.
Yeah, just want to comment on a couple of things. I mean, I think I certainly felt like I had a good understanding of, that this was the basic parameters of it from things that we discussed back when it was still too early in the contract negotiations to be public about it. But I think, one of the things that I would sort of want to remind folks is when we did our configuration work last year, going back to December 2023, when we did the structured brainstorming exercise, sort of what we wanted to see in our configuration, early childhood was education was the one item that got every single vote, in the dot voting process. And I think it's worth remembering that, because as I hear teachers, stress about, do we going to keep, I don't know about U32. I can tell you from Montpelier, they don't have a math teacher tree they can just pick someone off of. So this is.
Neither do we.
I just sort of, I realize that it's a lot. I realize it's fast. I also think it's possible to move fast if we really need to.
Thank you, Zach. Michaela?
I just have a couple little things to say. First, I want to acknowledge that there will be grief here. I mean, you heard it from Linnea. I feel it. My kiddos feel it. People in Worcester are going to feel it. That doesn't mean it's not a positive thing overall, but I think it's important to acknowledge the grief and not just skip over to but look how great this is for other reasons. I do think it's great for a lot of reasons. And then a few little things I would like to advocate for, kind of, I think what Julia was getting at was, I feel very strongly, I know the details need to be worked out, but I feel very strongly that there needs to be space in the pre-K that's located in the building at Doty for Worcester residents. For the waivered 10 hours or whatever a week it is, that there's a guarantee that there's space for whether it's 3 kids or 7 kids down the line. I don't want to lock our pre-K students out of that building. I wouldn't support that. And also thinking about the classroom sizes, both my kids were infants at Turtle Island back in the day, and I know their infant room, at least then, was pretty tiny. So I also wonder, the classrooms we have with a little bit of, work, could it just be looked at a little differently? I think the way you're talking about it now, we're going to lose the art and music room for.
You're correct. Yes.
So I have kind of mixed feelings about, the sense of crowding that stuff into the one wing, if it's not necessary, if things could be configured a little differently space-wise.
I hear you.
Thank you.
Hey, Daniel, and then Chris.
Yeah, I appreciate what Michaela said about grief. I certainly empathize with the disruption this causes for a lot of families, and I'm pretty ambivalent about it myself and excited to learn more. On that note, I'd love to see a copy of the letter that went out. I think sounds like other board members would be also. Another consideration with the pre-K, I more or less agree with what Michaela said. I think Worcester residents should be offered space if they want it, but I think also, this board's responsibility is to its district students, and we can't control the curriculum at Turtle Island, and so I think there similarly has to be a guarantee of space at the Rumney preschool class if people want to have a district sanctioned program, pre-K program as well, because that's, I think, our responsibility as well.
Would you mind me responding to that?
No, it's okay, 'cause
I would say that at any of our schools, that should a parent from Worcester want to have their child if we have space at East Montpelier or Berlin, Calais, I think that's our obligation in that case. But first, would they like to be there in their community? Yes.
And we would have to create policy around that so that we don't end up with all the kids wanting to go to one destination either. And, we would have excellent 5 pre-Ks in all our districts. Yeah. I want to acknowledge, Chris, you go, and then I'll try to bring it home, because we also have community schools after, and we have a full board agenda, and I don't want to sugarcoat this either. This is important. So go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. So a couple things. I do support this proposal. But the devil can be in the details, and so I would urge this board not to agree to anything until we see the lease itself and not delegate the authority to sign the lease without us seeing it first. I'm just putting out a marker here. And the other is that if we feel strongly about ensuring that Doty residents have pre-K spots at Turtle Island, that becomes a lease term. And so it's not, whimsical or, oh, if there's space, maybe it will happen. It becomes part of the lease. So that becomes a guarantee, more or less, on that. And it's a development where we're going to have a private-public partnership. And we're not, working collaboratively, maybe it'll be integral, but not yet. And so Turtle Island has its interests and responsibilities to their clientele, and we have the same here. And there'll be overlap, and there may be some conflict too, as it works out. So I would like to understand, in terms of the building, is Gillian the ultimate authority in the building? Or are we segregating the building to the point where we're giving control of the 5 classrooms over to Turtle Island so that their director is the ultimate authority for that building? It's a governance question.
Correct.
Okay.
We actually see 2 documents that have to be created here, a lease document that outlines services and all of that, and a memorandum of understanding around some of the other things. I mean, there are issues around like our building security, our systems. There's a lot of things like that that have to be worked out as well. And so I see 2 documents that help us make sure that we're clear on who has a decision making, when is that decision making there, and what are because we are the landlord, really, is what we are in that agreement, but we're not their director, right? And so we just have to make sure that we outline those pieces.
Okay.
So, yeah.
The other comment I wanted to make is, Linnea, if you have a list of the Doty traditions that you want to see live on, let's talk about that, because it would require going the extra mile to, or actually 6 miles with a bus from Rumney to Doty, just so that the intermingling takes place in real time at Doty and Rumney. And so we're offering to, extend our transportation dollars to do something like that. That ensures real continuity and real integration, as opposed to, but it will be a difficult transition, but I hope we can do it in an effort to make sure Doty ultimately.
Chris, I would say that I see hand too, but I think we could, Linnea can communicate with Gillian, and Gillian can communicate with Caroline, and that is something that they can do together. And it is very much within their ability. And as far as the funds for busing, they are creative, and they will know what that we support this, but it wouldn't be the board deciding which traditions we should keep. Yeah.
Just one more thing, in terms of the integration, it involves the Middlesex community too, so I hope we have a forum there to talk about the transition, because it's a sending and a receiving, in a way, school, and integrating two communities, and there's going to be emotional impacts both ways. So I hope we have a forum for the community, the Middlesex community, in terms of what's coming down the pike. Thank you.
Zach?
I don't know if this was Chris's intent or not, so if I'm putting words in your mouth, I apologize. But I think in terms of that question about like what can we do to preserve traditions, I'd ask that we look at what can we do specifically this spring, so that we're looking, so that we have some runway where there still are the two distinct communities, having some time to get them working together before they're really thrown in all in the same room.
Go ahead, Elizabeth. Yeah. Oh, Gillian says they're already working on it. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yeah, as somebody who is in early ed myself, I think the biggest thing I'm thinking about is like, I kind of want to play by play because I'm excited for a lot of good reasons, but also I am curious about any roadblocks that have been identified, or if there has been an audit of possible roadblocks, because as somebody who's done early ed, there can be roadblocks. And so I'm just curious about kind of where you are in that exploration process, because when we're talking about moving a group or two groups of children, I really want to make sure that we don't get sidelined by roadblocks. And that can definitely happen when you have dual oversight, AOE and Child Development Division.
Yeah, you really hit on several of the things, but I would also say that having the licensor in there early to look at space, like what are the physical issues that we might have, there are some things that have to be done that we would incur some costs for as a landlord, and there are some things that we will work with Turtle Island to make sure that, okay, if this is what you're bringing in as well. And then, yes, licensing, who's responsible for which piece of the licensing and upkeep of all of that will be outlined probably in the MOU because of those issues. But yeah, we've already had some conversations about, which is why some of the roadblocks were too big for for us to consider, like a Berlin in the immediate time period.
So I just want to clarify, because we will have time for public comments at the end of the meeting, and I might be a while. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead.
I'm in strong support of this proposal, and I agree with a lot of the points that people were making about needing to learn more and wanting to see specific breakdowns and configuration of transportation. And I think there's a lot of really good ideas on the table, and I wanted to respond to your comment, Diane, because I wanted to remind you and everyone that about a year ago, we worked with Jean, and we did some brainstorming when we started looking at what different configuration models might look like. And I think it was the majority of board members that made a point that early ed was a priority, and if we could lease out some of the building space that wasn't being used and be creative, we could meet the needs of the community and have more of a community-oriented school. And so I think that it's messy and there are questions unanswered. And I think that for those who feel like the trust had been broken by the idea of closing Doty and the conversation about potentially putting that on the ballot, I encourage you to stay connected and to keep asking the questions, because I think that this is what transparency and clear articulation looks like. As the questions come in, it's being received, and then charts are being worked up, and then information is being administered the next meeting, and it goes on that way. And so I just encourage everyone to keep putting in good ideas and keep asking those hard questions and stay involved. And I, for one, read a very long statement in strong support of closing Doty at the time in terms of supporting the best use of resources and giving the students more programming and a richer experience, which clearly was not the consensus. And so I also am moving on and don't think that Doty should be closed. I think that moving forward with a community-oriented mindset is a good path forward.
Thank you, everybody. This was a really rich discussion. I want to also support our superintendent and the work that has been done. It's complicated. We knew that we couldn't disclose all of the information right away because we were working with two different boards and we were respecting both organizations. This is super exciting. As somebody that sits in the Build and Bright Futures board as co-chair and hears about the needs of our communities for now almost 6 years, I want to say that, we have to center equity for all our students in our region, and sometimes we still think about just our schools, but the Washington region, and I'm not saying our district doesn't matter, but it's like what builds our community. We heard from teachers, we've heard it would be devastating to lose 70 spots. And it's a public and a private partnership. We keep talking about this as in the state in general, and everybody's always, public schools are not willing to partner with us. They don't have the room, and that's absolutely not true. We have the room in order to be able to both serve our community kids, provide them the opportunity. At the moment, we don't even are able to serve pre-K. in our Doty school. This is like providing us an opportunity. And I'm not saying that it's an easy transition, but I know that we're creative. We were hit with COVID, and we were as creative and pivot, and we were able to give our students and our communities what they need. So I have trust in our administrators, and I have trust in our board that we would put the resources necessary to make this transition as smooth as possible. But just to get an idea, like the population in just you guys can visit the Central Vermont page on the Build and Bright Futures website, but the population under 10 just in our community, it's almost 7,000 kids, and this is data from 2023. And the children living in poverty of that is almost 30% of them are living in poverty too. And the access to, I have just too many numbers here, and the access to childcare, even after the passage of the new Child Care Act, and with all of the new opportunities open in the past year with the grants, we have not been able to fulfill the needs for just the Washington Central area. We're losing doctors, we're losing, so I want us to think about, like, holistically, yes, think about our district, but how do we, as we're all interconnected in so many ways, and this helps us build a community. So, and I'll leave that at that, and that we were transparent in a way that we put a statement out that we could have put out, that we will be better. The communications committee met yesterday. We're working on a frequently asked question document, and we will do our best to communicate as soon as we get more information.
So may
Go
I
ahead.
share next steps? So next steps in this, so you can be aware, transition plan, so that you can see what we're doing. We're going to be talking with the families tomorrow in Worcester, and the Doty families. And then we are also going to be bringing you the lease and MOU documents. So this is where I would just say Turtle Island's under a really tight time frame right now because of their existing lease ending. And so we are going to work with our attorneys to get a lease document together for the next board meeting. And we will get that posted as soon as we have that for you to start reviewing. And then we'll be working on the MOU that will be a part of that as well. There's a lot of details in each one of those three documents, but those are the three things that you should be expecting from administration. And hopefully, as we get them, we can share them with you as the board prior to the board packet, just so you have additional time to be able to peruse those as they're coming in. Because typically we wait till a board packet, but these are things that we need you to have as soon as we have them. So that if there are any questions, you could get those back to administration, and we could start to address those so that we can be prepared to do that. And I will say that that's our hope for Turtle Island, to be able to stay vibrant and be able to know what they're doing next as well. We exist as a school system, no matter what decision we make. I would just be really sure they're really struggling with what their organization can do next. And so we just want to be aware of that. We have grief on our side, they have grief on their side. And so I think if we can help each other in this process, I think we'll all be good in the end. So thank you, everybody.
So as we are in the culture, Patrick, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. I just can't help myself. I need to push back a little bit, Flora, on I agree that we're all connected, and that you know, it's kind of hard to notice where the boundary is when you go from Middlesex to Montpelier and you're driving down 12. I appreciate that, and I know that there are a lot of families that have residences in both our district and in Montpelier, but we're not. Our charter is to our district first, and I think we need to make sure that that's at the forefront. And so we need to make sure that while I'm really interested in this proposal, and I know it's got some bumps that we've got to flatten out. We need to keep an eye on our district, and if we can make something work that's awesome, then let's go for it. But it's it's slightly different than what you said, and I just needed to push back a little bit on.
That's okay. I respect that. I feel like this is a way to also keep our little school that we love too. So like a way to see the opportunities that we have in front of us. But I hear what you're saying. Now we're still in the cult report. Stephen, you were going to share a little bit about contracts quickly, or?
Yeah, so just quickly, our teacher contracts were delivered this last week. So, so they are in the hands of all of our certified teaching staff for them to be working with us next year. You see that we have a couple of retirements and resignations later in the piece, so we'll have a few positions to fill. And then I also wanted to highlight one other piece, which you have is 99% of your packet, which is the audit. We'll highlight that when we get to the finance committee part of that. And so we'll do that as well.
Jen? Okay, okay. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. You said the certified teaching staff, does the ESP, do those contracts follow?
Will be going out. We have, so the certified staff has to have theirs by April 1st. No, I said that wrong. April 15th and May 1st for the ESP staff. So yes, I'll get my dates right.
Thank you.
I just hand them out.
Okay. So we're,
Yeah.
okay, so we're going to leave the cult report there. We're going to move into the community schools report. And we have Beck and Betta here with us. And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves again and doing the whole.
Yeah, so this will be a regular part of our, in addition to our cult report. So you'll be getting these regular updates from now on.
Hi, everyone. In case you haven't noticed, there's a track meet happening still now, and it is getting dark, and I have heard they are not close to done, so I just had to run out and see if we can get them a little more light so that we don't injure ourselves. So that's, if they're still going, you can join and cheer on when we're done. But so I did a little bit of this conversation with the configuration committee beforehand. So I want to, and the last time I spoke with you all as a board, we talked a little bit about that kind of like, you're going to hear me go back to vision, program, structure, and resource. And that we want vision to drive program, to drive structure, to drive resources. And really talk about, we're going to live in those two spaces of vision and program tonight. As we talk about community schools, Beck's going to do most of the kind of conversation around what has happened so far. But in particular, I want to continue to honor that the vision that Washington Central has set forth is really aspirational and beautiful and exciting. And there are lots of elements of that vision around having young people use their passion and creativity to be contributing members to their local and global communities. We're going to come back to that over and over and over again because it is what brings me here. Hopefully it is what brings you all and inspires you all. And I think that's really the framework to help us continue to make decisions. Your strategic plan, your humanity and justice statement, all of those things have stemmed from that real, very, very concrete goal in your mission. And so I think I'm gonna constantly bring us back to that. And then we have this opportunity through community schools to explore really what can that mean in a coherent way for our school district. That doesn't mean how we're structured. It doesn't necessarily mean anything other than like, what can we experiment with that really does lend itself to helping us realize the vision more fully. And so I'm going to have Beck talk a little bit about her first 12 days on the job, which I feel like warrants some like congratulations, and also like it's also exciting that she's here with us, and also some grace, right? That we are continuing to learn and grow together. Okay, so you want to do introductions and then we'll go from there.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Dezan. I go by Beck, and I use she, her pronouns. I am really excited to be on board as the community schools coordinator, and I want to just highlight for you all a little differently than what we talked about in the configuration meeting, just highlight some key aspects of the community schools initiative. And I think importantly, I want to talk about the community schools initiative as a grant-funded opportunity for us to think about how schools are, what they feel like, what programs they include, sort of the what's happening within our school buildings. This is different than when we talk about schools that are in our community, and this came up earlier, so I just want to highlight, like, community schools in our community geographically located are lowercase CS, and the Community Schools Initiative is a philosophy or a model of schools, and we'll call that capital CS Community Schools, or the Community Schools Initiative. So this is a grant-funded opportunity for us to do some exploration, thinking about the 5 pillars of community schools. We've really focused in on 3 of those to highlight those for you. This is thinking about rigorous and relevant curriculum. All 5 of the Community Schools Initiatives really align beautifully with the Washington Central's core values, their mission. Like the barrels and the flow charts are all there, but we really landed on these 3 buckets for community schools, at least initially. So rigorous and relevant curriculum, really thinking about what is happening, what is the experience of our students in our classrooms, what is school like for them, how are they engaged, and uncovering some of that information initially for them. So lots of listening and learning opportunities over the next couple of weeks and months. The second bucket is thinking about reducing barriers to access, or bridging barriers to access for our students, thinking about integrated student supports for our families and our community members. So pulling back the curtain a little bit on are there things in the way of our students learning? We know in schools what those are often, and making sure that those are things that we can resource and respond to as a community in a systemic, sustainable way. The third is thinking about our third space programming, third space being the things that happen outside of our traditional school day, be that with our community members in a exciting, vibrant night program, or be that in after-school programming that keeps our young people engaged in enriching educational opportunities for an extended school day. These are the 3 areas that we're focusing on, at least initially. We're going to be doing a lot of listening, inviting community members, staff, students into that process. And I want to say, I failed to mention this earlier, something that I believe really strongly in and is a core value of my own, and I see absolutely going to be reflected in this process, is really centering student voice within this. So we already have a group of young people who are interested. We're creating opportunities for students to really drive this process and be at the steering wheel for talking about their experience. And philosophically, that's a place that I stand firmly, is really centering our students' experience. And that's going to be pre-K through 12, and then families and community members within that.
Do you have questions? Are we taking questions? Okay.
You can take questions from the board. Oops. The board can ask questions, sorry. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, this is all really wonderful. I love this model, and I love the focus of thinking about how our children can access learning in the best possible way. One of the things that I think is starkly present right now in our world is mental health. And I'm just curious about how the community school model supports, integrates, works on mental health for students, because I feel like often that's the biggest barrier for many, many students and families.
We've had a lot of conversations over 12 days. But I think one of the things that when Beck sort of talks about that reduction of barrier, right, some of what sort of having that sort of holistic model in mind is like, what are the community partners that we can continue to bridge barriers with? So in the early moments of this, we had some conversations with community partners around like, what would it look like if you were here one day a week? What would it look like if you were after school, where we know that young people might be okay, like it might be fine during school, but then after school, they may need sort of that bridge space. What would it look like for a mental health provider to be on site? We are in the process of exploring those. And what's really exciting about this in the state of Vermont right now, and also nationally, is that we're not the only folks working on that through a community school lens. And so we meet, I'm going to expand that a little bit. Like we like Beck, myself, other members of leadership meet with a community of practice with folks at UVM. The funding that we have has braids funding with UVM over the next 2 years. UVM has started to think about how do they actually really support internship So this year in community schools, there are mental health interns who are supervised by UVM. That is, there are opportunities around that, whether or not that lifts to the surface, right? Like through our needs assessment, what that looks like. But know that that is the conversation in the state, in this now cohort of, I think we're 11 strong, who are sort of that capital CS model, but also nationally. Rural communities are not alone in grappling with this. And there are many, many places that are doing that. And that's one way, is through university partnerships, through other kind of community health center partnerships, things like that.
Any other questions, Chris?
Did I understand that you are reaching out for student input? I think you used the word steering wheel, maybe. How are you soliciting student input? Because there are a lot of motivated students who will reach out to you, but wouldn't necessarily provide the range of student experiences. So how are you soliciting a wide range of student experiences as you move forward?
So initially, on the advisory board, there are 2 students currently, and that is sort of a core group of eight advisory members. So immediately, there are students involved in the hiring process, the visioning process, and that. I'm using an organizing model of one-to-one relationship building, so really like opening up opportunities for people to be in conversation with me. You're asking like specifically how are students doing that? I'm volunteering for lunch duty and recess duty to try to meet students. You know, I'm coming in 3/4 of a way through a school year, not necessarily having established relationships with folks. And so I'm like making myself as visible as possible to build relationships quickly to get in the door. The one-on-one model, for folks who aren't familiar with the organizing model, is like you meet with one person who then invites another person in, who then invites another person in. And that's essentially how I'm approaching this. Student groups. We went today with a group of young people to go visit another community school at North Country. Like hopefully these will propel other people to come in to do that. So the invitation's out there, the invitation to come into conversation about this is out there. I'm also using like established vehicles of people who have relationships, TAs, advisors into student groups, to meet a wide representative group of young people. I mentioned earlier that we're getting some help from some experts. They're gonna bring their expertise for a very wide cast net to get that input from everybody, student-wise, with invitations again to come forward.
And I would say that expertise has in their forefront is who are you hearing from regularly and who are you not hearing from regularly, right? Which is actually for us is the thing that we're interested in. We talked earlier about the purpose of community schools as an umbrella is to drive through your vision to equitable outcomes. That, again, those are things you've named in your strategic plan, or these are important. We know there are some equity indicators that are telling us we have some gaps. We now have the responsibility to say, okay, if these are the 3 things that we're going to kind of focus on, how do we get input from young people who are the furthest from justice, who are saying, this is the information, like this is what our experience is, and use that to really then lift up, uncover what do we need to do next.
Just curious, how do you picture are there walls or are there bounds, or what is the universe of the boundaries that you're like, do you think is your purview? For you said the 3 buckets are curriculum, removing boundaries, and third space programs. So I just want to, like, what's the universe of boundaries?
Can you say more about what like
I can imagine a ton of things that would keep kids from participating or from learning or from what are those barriers?
Yeah, that's a great question. And part of it is uncovering those. So some of the initial work that Beck's doing is uncovering what are those barriers and then starting to that testing process that I think right. So when we think about sort of came through user-centered design or community-centered design processes around like, how are we uncovering and lifting up what are people saying about what's preventing me from being in school, Maybe that's the, right? We know that that's an issue nationally around chronic absenteeism. What's preventing me from being in school? Can we see patterns there? And then feeding back like, well, what if we tried this? And then feeding that back into community. We're just at that exploration stage right now. So in some ways, those boundaries or parameters of play are still a little bit malleable because we haven't well defined what the thing is. But once we know, like, this is what young people are saying, like, it would be really helpful if X happened, or I really want, like, I'm not feeling super engaged in my classroom. It would be great if, like, I had a class on this, and lots of young people are saying the same. We're starting to see patterns, and that's part of what this sort of expert group helps us do. That makes sense?
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can, oh, Daniel, go ahead. Oh, Ursula, sorry, I didn't. Until, yeah.
I was just gonna mention like what the configuration committee earlier, how we were struggling with this and trying to contextualize it with our work, because it was a lot of learning for me, I'll say. But I think it was especially interesting to hear Becca and Beck emphasize the importance of coherence and consistency, and discovering sort of what pockets of community schools sort of work is already happening, and sort of lifting that up and identifying programming. And it seemed also like projects, but also in practices that that all reinforce what's in our strategic plan already. And a lot of this stuff we're already doing it, just without naming it. And so in the context of the configuration committee, where this intersects with our process is sort of broadening our lens in terms of what programming we're emphasizing to evaluate any possible configuration proposal we get. Because up to now, our focus on programming has been mostly on what is, not what could be and what we want to emphasize and grow. So thank you very much for presenting twice.
Ursula.
So I was just wondering, within these 3 pillars, there's this idea of bringing services to our schools. Some of the barriers are with community capacity. Is there some hope, and it's probably like maybe really dreamy of me, but is there some hope of maybe even being able to grow capacity in this model? You know, is that part of it?
I think nobody should be afraid of being a little dreamy. Like, I think we should be dreaming big and we should be thinking big. That's what our young people deserve us to do. And so thank you. I don't think that's dreamy. I think that we have places and models that are saying that, right? There are plenty of places who are saying, what would it look like if this was housed closer to home? What would it look like if this was housed, if something became mobile, say like dentistry became mobile, right? We have models of that already. And so what would it look like if we utilized our access to transportation in more malleable ways? We have models, people are doing this. It doesn't have to be like a far off thing. We're just gonna start to learn from them and bring that in. Does that make sense? Thanks for dreaming.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
One of the questions I have is about how you're bringing the staff, the faculty into this process, because I'm a big believer that relationships is where connection begins. And I know my child has a really great relationship with their TA. And so I'm just curious as to how you're folding faculty in and when that happens and what that looks like.
I think the first part of my answer is going to be really similar to the student one. I'm meeting as many people. I have a list of like 35 folks on a whiteboard that are scheduled to meet with me the past 2 weeks and next 3 weeks. And I think like I just continue to try to put myself in positions to meet folks. And the amazing thing is it's working. So I'm like meeting with, can I tell names of people? Is that fine? Okay. So I like met with Erica Zimmerman from Washington County Friends of Education. And then through that, I had like 7 people that I set up meetings with. I'm meeting with a teacher tomorrow. And through that conversation, you know, I met with Karen Lieberman, and now I'm meeting with like 4 other people at school. So I think to answer your question initially, staff are folding in and meeting with me, which is about like me listening and learning and us developing a little bit of some like excitement and some fire around things that can happen and understanding of things that are happening and explorations of things that are maybe like, is this possible? Is this community schools? What is this? We're doing some of that together. I think also I'm hearing within there is you're talking about a student having a really great relationship with staff, and how is that becoming part of community schools? You know, I don't know if I have, Becca might need to jump in on that, but what I will say is that there's like a bubbling that's happening where people are like, oh, you're talking about community schools in a program, and can I pilot something? And let me bring this student in to meet with you, and my TA might meet with you to talk about that, or would you like to come to this conference? So I think, you know, it's been an exciting 2 weeks, and I'm hopeful that that excitement continues to boil up.
And I think after this, Beck and I are going to sort of distill and then send something back out to staff. I think the other thing I hear is like, that we talked a little bit about in configuration is that some of the work that we're doing is like, as Beck's listening, how are we building coherence among so that right now, some of the feedback I get is some things are siloed and they don't seem to fit together, even though they're super related. But we aren't, like, part of my job is to help describe that relationship a little bit more coherently so that people do realize, like, oh, that thing I'm doing actually is part of this bigger vision, picture, and all of that. And so that's the other kind of way of bringing people in, is that it's not just this one idea. It's all of these ideas really do fit together.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move us to our principal report so that I can give us a break too, because I'm sure people are dying of just sitting. But I didn't want to skip the principal report. I know that we're tight with time, but we were going to highlight Berlin to start in the humanity and justice.
So Celia, if you could highlight that work.
There she is.
Just got to unmute. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. And for some reason, there. I was like, for some reason, my camera's really blurry. That's fun. So our HJC committee has been working. Brittany LeClaire is a staff member and a parent in our community, and she has been modeling some like crafting circles, so trying to create an entry point to engage more conversation around equity in our building. So on Thursday morning, it's been offering like a simple craft project where people can come in and connect and talk about things that are on their mind. We've been as a team creating videos or prompts to talk about, and it's illuminated some really exciting things and ways to help move us forward. So we're really excited about that, and I'm really grateful for her participation in our community, and we're doing some fun things, so it's great.
Thank you, Celia.
And then we also want to highlight Callis, mostly because I need to clarify, when I send out a message that said Callis school closure, I really should have put a date on that. And I appreciate the board members who pointed that out to me. But Callis had a water issue, which is something that our district seems to be excellent at doing. But I want Jared to share some of the work that they're doing with their parent advisory group.
Community engagement.
Yeah, and also be able to say, how they're doing with their old water. So, Jared.
Yep. I'm here. I'm not going to turn the camera on. It's running the internet real slow. And after the couple days I've had, my hair looks like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. So I don't want anybody to see me.
Oh, darn.
I'm sure you do. Yeah, so the quick on the water issue, it was a well tank issue. It was causing us to not get water into the building. It was remediated today. Chris, our maintenance custodian guy, was able to get, I believe it's New England Water Systems in here, and they got it this morning. But we still have to fill the well tank, and the well had been almost drained because the well had been leaking out of the well tank. So, but we've got portalets and we've got drinking water, and we can get through the next 2 days. So, it's been a whirlwind the last couple days, but we should be back and up and ready to go after spring break fully. So the issue has been, at least from what we understand, has been remediated, and over break, Chris will be working to prep the water and get it back and tested so that we can get to drinking water again. So, but we are back on track, hopefully. Our goal is to lose less than 3 kids into the portalets. Like that's our goal. Because it's all about smart
You're
folks,
in a
everyone.
recorded.
Yeah, that's okay.
Not
Then okay,
like-
then just one. Then just one. That's
You're
all
all-
I'm gonna say.
Don't.
So on the other part, the part that I'm here for in the principal's report. So until this year, we haven't really had a PTNO. That organization broke off into Friends of Calais a couple of years ago, and Friends of Calais has really grown, and they are a really great organization, but they are trying to do more and more for the whole community, not just the school. And so we've gotten what we're calling our parent advisory team together. And we've got a good working group right now, a small but mighty group that is starting to find their own feet and work together. And they are really starting to do some things. And one thing they're going to do is, as Teacher Appreciation Week will be coming up soon, they are planning a week of things for our teachers and for our staff. And so they're getting a lot of that. They're coming together and doing a lot of that planning. And it's great to have a functioning group of parents to sort of help to get things, not just get things done, but bounce ideas off of, and just bring that input in. And so hopefully the group will continue to grow, and we will in Calais have not only the Friends of Calais, but a working PTNO group. So we're looking forward to what they come up with for the Teacher Appreciation Week, and that we continue to grow the group and get them moving forward into a strong group as we go into the future.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Jared. Do you still want to do, you three do the Rebecca has some or no? No, just they had enough airtime. Okay. Shucks. Okay, now we're gonna move into the board operation. I'm gonna make an executive set. Oh, okay, we were gonna skip all of the updates. Do you want to say something quickly?
Yeah.
On
I got some time-sensitive update. So I'd like to, about the community center.
Career Center.
Career Center, excuse me. Career Center is moving forward on a plan to, or with plans to build a new building. And the details have gone public. I talked about this about a month ago. But the reason I wanted to make this comment was on the May 4th is the time when the Career Center is meeting with the town of Barry to talk about the details with the select board. And then there's a review board on May 14th. And so things are moving very quickly with that project. And the hope is to have a request to the board about a bond language and a bond vote for this upcoming year. So things are moving very quickly with that. And you can see details about the project and the Career Center on news articles on VPR, VT Digger, as well as CBS. So it's getting some attention.
Thank you, Patrick. I was going to skip the VSBA report for now because we were also going to talk about advocating as a board, and you all have seen the letter from the secretary on Title VI. So we're going to move right into board operations. And then after we do the first 2 items in board operations, I'm going to give the board a break. And I'm thinking of moving advocating as a board after personnel, just to make sure that we get our work done. Because it's like, it's going to be a long night. So let's move to approve, to affirm the calendar from 2025, 2026. Could I have a motion for that? Thank you. Ursula moves it. A second? Second. Thank you, Daniel. Any discussion? The information was there. Go ahead.
Just kind of anticipating the next item. Hi, thank you. In anticipation of the next item on the agenda, it seems to me that every year there's this like, can't we knock off a few days of school because we don't want to go into the following week discussion that happens. So I just wanted to throw it out there since we have been running into this regularly. I think I kind of missed when we decided to give take a whole week for Thanksgiving. So I just want to put it out there, maybe not for this year, but maybe for future years, if this keeps being an issue, maybe we don't have 5 days off for Thanksgiving, so that we don't run into like 2 days at the end of the year where people are advocating to get rid of. Just a thought.
Thank you, Michaela. Zach?
The other thing that I've heard a few comments on, just in terms of how we present the calendar, I think most people I've talked to are used to having a certain number of snow days built into the calendar. And I think it's sort of I think it caught some people off guard this year. Wait a second, we thought that this last day of school was sort of the last day of school, and didn't account for a school in Vermont not having the snow day, having a certain snow day buffer in there. So, potentially if we're looking at changing which days we have off, to also have some padding in there, sort of aligns with some of what the other districts are doing and what people are sort of assuming is going to happen with snow days.
Go ahead.
So I would offer that this calendar is an aligned calendar with all of the schools that send to the Career Center. So we match day for day, except for one in-service day that Harwood and Montpelier have that we don't have. But otherwise, we go to school on the exact same days as all of those other schools. And I would also say that across the state, superintendents work to align the April vacation and I think the first days of school. There were a couple of things that were aligned. Yep. And so we're moving, and if you look at legislation, we're probably moving to a statewide calendar as well.
Michelle, do you have another question, Michaela? I'm just going to let Michelle ask a question because she had her hand up, and then you can go. Michelle?
It's not really, it's more of just a follow-up on Zach's. The calendars used to say like contingency days would be this, so parents knew when, like, if there's snow days, we have these 5 contingency days to put in the calendar. I don't see that on here anymore.
So it says that snow days will extend the final day of school, is the way that we've worded that now.
Michaela and then Patrick.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in light of all of that, I remember, I feel like this year's calendar does say contingency days, but like,
yeah,
I've, as a parent, always been very aware of that, and I'm not sure maybe that we get word out enough, like, hey, plan on actually June 25th being the last day of school. And if we get out sooner, like bonus, that's, like, just maybe a little more awareness around that, so we don't run into this regularly.
Thank you, Michaela. Patrick?
Yeah, I appreciate the wording this year. I think that's different than previous years, and this makes it clearer that, as it says, snow days will extend. So I appreciate this wording.
We had several conversations at the LMC committee, which is our labor management committee, and some people really wanted to keep the other way. It just sort of depends because because it's consistency across the state too. So if we change it and then in another district they don't change it, but anyway, Ursula.
I was just going to give another reason why, if we built snow days in and we said this is the last day, but then snow days, like a lack of snow days could shorten it. It gives unpredictability to families who have to find daycare and then have no idea, right? Here, like, you're going to be out this day. It could be later. It's both ways. It's a two-edged sword. I get it. But the families who have to find that care need to know that earliest possible date without it being up in the air until the last minute.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so those, oops, Diane, thank you.
That's okay. I just wanted to say appreciation that we have been maintaining Juneteenth as a holiday, that sometimes that's the first one to go if there's some questions. So I appreciate our dedication to maintaining that holiday.
Thanks, Diane. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. And then there's language to approve the last day of school. I'm wondering if I could have a motion. So just do the one, yeah, don't do the second one. So two separate ones, so do the first motion.
All right. I move that the last day of school for students be Tuesday, June 24th, with a dismissal at 12:30 for elementary students and 11:30 for U32 students.
Thank you. Could I have a second for that? Thank you. All right, any discussion? Oh, Kelly.
Sorry, I'm fine with this. The one thing that always surprises me as a pre-K parent is that pre-K gets out like 2 days earlier, and that's always told to us like 3 days earlier. So if we could write the pre-K date on the calendar, the last day, or have that be more publicized, that would be awesome.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, although, sorry, Patrick.
Do we have flexibility here?
It's up to the board to decide. So
what's their obligation?
So the requirement for the state of Vermont is 175 student days. And we have 178 days that we have, which is, I would say that we have, as a result of that, teaching staff has 7 in-service days so that we can have the 178 student days. We reduced our calendar in the last negotiations from 190 teacher days and 180 student days to this. And so the recommendation of administration is that we fill all of those student days, right? I feel like it's a bad precedent to cut instructional days.
Yeah.
And there's always an argument about, but what about those last days? But you know what, they're instructional days. There's always a last day, no matter what we say. And so maintaining those instructional days is important to us.
Yeah. And always, as a parent that has another option for the last days of school, there's ways to talk to your teachers, and they can still assist to those camps. But then we also, it's an equity issue with the kids that are not able to access that. So it's important. So all those, Daniel?
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think in the future, if we have a little bit of flexibility, ensuring that the final week of school is 3 days at a minimum, I think might increase attendance on those days. But I'm fine. I'm going to vote for this.
So I heard that in the future, we would add a student day to make it 3 days in the future by Daniel's request.
And he's talking with the teachers. Okay, thanks, Daniel.
So-
All those in
There's
favor, Chris.
Why were you asking if there's flexibility?
In the public comment, we heard that there was flexibility, and it was encouraged by our constituents to talk about that. So I wanted to bring that up as with respect to that comment and other things I've heard at the bus stop.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. We have a second a motion there, if the recommendation for the last day for teachers. Yeah, I recommend.
Is it I recommend or I move? I move
No,
that the last day of work for all staff be Wednesday, June 25th. This recommendation includes the observation of Juneteenth holiday on Thursday, June 19th, 2025, which will be a non-work day. Teachers will have fulfilled their 185 days school year ESP will have fulfilled their 183 days.
Thank you, Ursula. And second by Daniel. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands up. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, let's have a 5-minute break. Okay, so I'm gonna, like I said, I moved advocating as a board to lower, and we might table it too, so that we have enough mind to talk about it. I'm seeing some nodding heads. So should I table it or try to move it? Table it. Table it. Okay, first, awesome. Now let's move into our audit, and I need a motion for the audit, and it's in page 17, in case you guys are looking for, and the Finance Committee had a, and then we can talk about it, and Suzanne is here with us, and we should be really proud of this. Keely? Oh, Zach.
I move, okay. I move that the board accept the audited financial statements for the Washington Central Unified Union School District for the year ended June 30th, 2024 from RHR Smith and Company.
Second.
Thank you, Keely. Thank you, Zach. Questions, comments? Zach?
I just wanted to make a comment on this. When we met with the auditors, they had some very good things to say about it, and oftentimes you can get more from the things that are sort of, you know, the spaces or the side comments that are made. And there were some comments made about other clients and things that happened, and it made it very clear that having an audit that is this clean is really not very common. So I wanted to say congratulations to Suzanne and her team for that.
Any other comments? Thank you to you and to your team, Suzanne. You guys are awesome. So not having any other.
Is there anything she would like to highlight?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you highlight some? Should I bring a mic to you?
Yes.
Here comes Spencer to the rescue.
Thank you, Spencer. I'm trying to figure out the page number. I think it's 191 in the packet, but it's 106. The very last page of the audit really gives you the gist of things. Basically, we have no weaknesses found, no material weaknesses, no significant deficiencies, non-compliance material to financial statements noted, none, and we are a low-risk auditee. So those are all what you want to find, what you want to look for in your audits. And we've already started planning for our next audit. In fact, I have paperwork due next week to them to make sure that we can get this in on time. So we're doing really great things. And it's a whole team effort. So yeah, I'm proud of my team.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for staying this late. We took a lot of time. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay. Now we're moving, sorry, I went all the way to that page, and I'm all the way up in my agenda. Where, oh, you. So now the award, yep. The district-wide combined construction project contract is in page 132. Thank you, Ursula. Oh, Zach also has it, so whoever.
Go for it.
I move that the board increase the allocation of capital reserve funds to the WCUUSD 2025 combined construction project by $330,000, I'm going to start that over, $330,276, and award the contract to Farrington Construction Company Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $1,038,896.
Second.
Thank you, Ursula, and thank you, Zach. Any discussion, any questions? The Finance Committee did review all of this and had lots of questions, and so we feel really good about this. All those in favor, oh, are you asking a question? No?
We just can't find it in the
It's
Page
132. Oh.
In the printed.
The printed version doesn't have the full audit in it.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's in
we
the.
didn't put the audit in the printed version.
Yeah, it's too big, it's
It
too
was there
big.
when I scrolled through it on my computer. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Page 18 and 19.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay. Yeah. Now we're going to move, part of the reason to table advocacy right now, and I do have a document, I see your comment on there, Diane, is because I really wanted to give policy its what it needs, right? And if otherwise, we wouldn't have the rich discussion that we operate as a board in policy. So don't worry, we would have time to talk about the other stuff, Diane. So let's move right into policy, the first reading. I'm going to give it to Chris, your policy chair.
Are going to consider not every policy, because we unfortunately don't have the versions that we actually worked on in the policy committee and made changes to. So we will not be considering tonight the conflict of interest policy, which is 134 and 135. And so that would bring us to B30, the staffing and job descriptions policy. And the committee didn't recommend any changes to it, but to keep it. Go ahead, Stephen.
We did actually ask for one change that I would just point to the board. So for the first reading, under implementation, each time a new position is established by the board or an existing position is reclassified,
right,
the superintendent will present. And by reclassified, just so you know, definition, that means it moves from bargaining to non-bargaining or within bargaining units. So if it were to change bargaining unit in any way, because we felt like that should be something the board should be aware of. So that will be added. This is a first reading, so we'll bring the revised version for the second one, but that was the one change we made there.
Right. Any questions? No, okay. So next up, we have A32, board goal setting and evaluation. And we spent a little time on this because we were curious as to why the superintendent would be setting out the activities for us as a board to do. So we modified it slightly to read, the board will participate in goal setting and self-evaluation, which could include activities developed or recommended by the superintendent annually, period. And we didn't we took out in April to remove the restriction of a specific month, but an annual event. Any questions?
Are you leaving April? We're striking April, is that what you're saying?
We're striking April, and we're adding, which could include, so it's the board setting its own goal setting rather than the superintendent recommending our goal setting. Because the way it reads without that addition is that we kind of, the superintendent is directing our goal setting activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's just. Yeah.
And my only question or comment is the one we're seeing doesn't have it struck out, correct?
Right.
Correct.
That's right. We didn't, yes.
We'll have that in the second reading.
And we're doing it just to take some stuff off of Stephen's plate, really. That was the motivator. And then the next is board relations with the school personnel.
So could I just, I was just wondering I know that this is just for the board, but the board goals and performance in the following areas. We put policy we did all of this, government relationships. I wonder what our role is in the strategic plan and.
Say that again, Flora, I'm sorry.
So adding two bullets to me, because we influence in some ways, we should be making sure that we're collaborating or removing barriers, both the strategic plan and our core beliefs. So I was wondering if those were bullets that we wanted to add. I'm just wondering.
I'm still not understanding, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can you?
So under implementation, it says that the particular attention will be given to board goals and performance in the following areas.
Right.
And adding a bullet for strategic plan, which isn't specifically listed there, and for core beliefs. Just as, they're just part of the attention.
To add them as categories.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
That works for me, yeah.
Thank you for translating.
Corvallis, yeah.
Okay, continue.
So next up is A34, Board Relations with School Personnel. We didn't see a need to make any or recommend any changes to this policy. So just keep it as it is.
I think
Is that what you were gonna say? I was just gonna ask if this is not a new policy, if we would normally get a red line, but if there were no changes, there's no red line.
Right.
I was asking about a red line copy of it, but since there are no proposed
There are no
changes, there's no
there are
red line
changes, right.
copy.
And again, we will have red line copies for our next meeting.
Thank you.
And so that our final,
I'm sorry, I just had one other question.
sure.
If there aren't any changes, it's been in effect for 5 years. I guess I'm just curious, do guidelines for board relations with principals and other administration exist? And if they don't exist, would it be appropriate to set a timeline on the development of them if that hasn't been developed in 5 years?
To develop.
In relations with the principal, this is the,
So I'm reading that under relations with the principal, where it says superintendent and the board chair will develop guidelines for board relationship with principals and other administrators, which by policy means that you should be able to have those guidelines. So I don't think you have to set a date. This says that we should have them. So it's actually circled on mine because I wanted to make sure that we had them.
well, that's fair, yeah, but in the practical world,
Yes.
not everything happens immediately, so I guess I'm curious, would it be helpful maybe to set a deadline?
I actually think that we have these guidelines,
I
that we
think
just
we
have
do.
not provided
Provide
them
them.
recently.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep, yep.
So,
Thanks.
Yep.
Well, then, good point.
We should
If we
bring
have the
them.
guidelines, we'll bring them at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
For review.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on A34? So next up, we have A24, which is board superintendent relationship. And the one change that we proposed to this policy was paragraph 5. It starts, while board members can work directly with superintendent and central office staff, board members may not give substantive direction to a staff member or suggest a course of action that staff perceives as a substantive direction. We were going to strike that because it's actually in the previous policy and it seemed redundant. So that was the only proposed change.
It's okay. You already have it in policy,
Right.
in the previous policy, and it's not actually substantive to the superintendent board relationship. It's about other staff members. So it's covered in the other one. We just felt like it was redundant and didn't pertain to the superintendent specifically.
Okay. I just feel like we're that board that needs to be reminded of this. So the more that we see it.
I'm happy to remind the board
okay.
of this policy.
Okay. So with that, that would be the proposed change to then readopt this.
Any other? Yeah, so you will bring it at the next meeting?
Yes.
In the policy report?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, with the chair, that the chair has developed with the superintendent.
Uh-huh. Okay. Thanks, Chris.
If you can point me in the chair's direction, I'll inquire.
Okay. And
Thank
you,
you.
the chair
That's all-
of the
that's all we have.
policy committee?
No, I think it's the chair of the board.
No, the report of the policy, I'm not going to get it right now. Okay, so thank you for inviting me to your policy committee. I think I might come to your policy committee to,
Well, you're welcome anytime.
yeah, I know. Okay. So moving, you're getting in lots of trouble. But personnel. Could I have a motion for approval? Page 140, I'm looking at other people so our new hires for 25, 26. Does somebody have it right in front of them, or should I read it? Oh, Zach.
I move we approve the hiring of Mark Chamberlain, PE teacher at Doty, Jessica Cobb, librarian at Rumney, Annie Kopak, special educator at Rumney, and McKenna Lund, music teacher at Rumney and EMES.
Second.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you, Daniel. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, moving into retirement.
I move we approve the retirement of Margaret McGlynn, speech language pathologist, Elizabeth Vanderlift, special education teacher at Berlin, and Mary Carpenter, interventionist at Calais, with thanks for their service.
Thank you. Thank you. Second by Keely. Okay, let's move into resignations.
We didn't vote.
Oh,
We gotta vote.
oh, we got to vote. So, yeah, sorry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
To all of these folks who have served very long periods of time and made a significant difference in the communities that they served. Even though they served the district as a whole, they had a very direct impact in each of their respective schools. So thank you very much, and happy retirement. And if you're looking for work, landscaping.
Okay. Lisa, you can scratch that last word. But all those in favor, well, we already did that. Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. Now let's move into resignations.
I move we approve the resignations of Blakely Gilmore, classroom teacher at Calais, Rachel Hernandez, special educator at Rumney, and Annalisa Kirby, special educator at Berlin, with thanks for their service as well.
Thank you. Second by?
Second.
By Patrick. Okay.
Is that effective immediately or at the end of the year?
End of the year.
Okay. Any other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, moving into our consent agenda. To approve the minutes.
We often get a vacancy update. I'm gonna do that.
Oh, sure, we can get, yeah, we actually had hiring this. Do you want to give a vacancy update of how are we doing, filling all our positions? We haven't done that in a while, but.
No, we haven't. I apologize. I don't have that in front of me, so I don't want to misstate any of them. We have posted positions out there. Some of them you would see from those that you just saw as resignations. But I will make sure that the board has that report.
Thank you.
And now I'm looking for a motion to approve our minutes of April 1st, and it says second there. Yeah.
I move that we approve the school board meeting minutes from April 1st, 2025.
Okay.
I thought you meant April 2nd.
It's April 2nd.
Oh, is it? April 1st and April 2nd.
April 1st and 2nd. There's two.
Oh, April 1st and 2nd,
One of them
Okay.
was a hearing.
Hearing.
2025.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Zach, Keely moved it and Zach seconded it. Okay. Board orders, the board orders hopefully have made it all the way to you, Chris, and maybe somebody can pass them to Natasha so she can sign and make a motion. Poor Natasha. Or Michaela can help her. You just like, just so that you can sign, sorry. But if you want to make a motion, you can make a motion. Otherwise, whoever has them in front of them. Okay, so Ursula is willing to make a motion. She has them right in front of her.
I move that we approve the board orders in a total amount of $1,106,670.75 for the date ranges of March 20th through April 16th.
Second.
Thank you, Ursula. Thank you, Zach. Any questions?
$106,670.75.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay. Future agenda items, we know we have one, board reflection. Go ahead.
I was not here because I was at the middle school track and field meet, their first meet of the season, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the middle school athletes because they did amazing.
Yay.
You have a shout out to their coach, too?
I just stood in the cold. They did all the work.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other board reflection, Ursula?
I was just going to say, I thought we had a lot of positive conversation around the community school initiatives, and I thought that was very good and helpful.
I agree with that, and I think we talked about maybe having the board learn a little bit more about what community schools are, so we understand it better. Okay, so with that, I'm going to open it to public comments so that then we can move into executive session. Are there any public comments? Somebody here has been waiting very patiently. Spencer, could we get her a mic? Thank you. And please introduce yourself and let us know which town you are from.
Hi, thank you. My name is Kathleen Bookchin. I live in Worcester, Vermont. And sorry, I was not here earlier. I couldn't be an octopus tonight and be in 3 places at once. And now it sounds like I'm going to have to be an octopus again tomorrow night and be in 3 places at once. So I did express one thing to Gillian as she walked out the door. I have a couple of comments, but I honestly feel hazardous about what she's about to do tomorrow with her students, because it sounds like there still needs to be a board vote and there still needs to be a lease. And so she's possibly going to tell her students tomorrow that it sounds like this is going forward, and there's maybe a 1% chance, it sounds like, according to Gillian, that it won't go forward. So I feel like not only are our 5th, 6th graders' heads going like this, back and forth, but now she is going to be talking to kids tomorrow at the school, and I expressed that I thought that was pretty hazardous. But that's not my decision to make, but I was going to share that. But I wasn't here for the public comment earlier, so I don't, excuse me again if I do repeat questions that have already been answered, but I'll just list my questions. There was the comment last year about moving the 6th graders to U32 at some point in the configuration conversations. And I am curious to know if that is still an idea for the future of the Washington supervisory conglomeration of schools, or does this new decision with this new partnership with Turtle Island and with Rumney and Doty, does that take that off the chopping block, or is it still a future idea that we could move these 6th graders? Does anyone know that answer?
We don't answer in public, sorry.
Okay.
We don't answer in public comment.
Okay.
We're taking notes, and we'll
Okay.
get back to you.
Thank you. So then my concern again is that these kids are getting whiplash. So not only are kids tomorrow getting whiplash in a meeting with their principal, but if these 5th graders are now going to transfer to Rumney from Doty, and then there's still the possibility out there in the big wide world of Washington Central that the 6th graders could eventually move to U32, that's a lot of ping pong. I don't know how else to put that. So, and my kid doesn't even go to Doty tomorrow. My kid won't be affected tomorrow. My kid possibly was going to go to Doty for 5th grade. I had him shadow Mrs. Honey's class 2 weeks ago. So I guess I had him shadow the wrong class. But, so now my kid is, thinking he's going to Miss Honey's class, but I haven't. Obviously, I found out at 6 o'clock tonight that he might not be. So again, a lot of ping pong. And I'm not saying I'm opposed, and I'm not saying I'm pro, I'm just saying a lot of ping pong. Because like we've heard tonight, and I have my own personal reasons, there's pros and cons. So my question was about the sixth graders. My next question was, how does having Turtle Island at Doty affect the playground? Because I know there has been ideas floated in the past 10 years that I've been a Worcester, actually 12 years that I've been a Worcester resident, about Doty someday getting a new playground. So I don't know if that is an idea, and it would be a great collaboration, not only for the Doty kids, but for the Turtle Island kids to have some new play structures. And I know Romney has some structures that Doty doesn't, so that's a plus. A third issue was, it has been floated just in the last month that ECO is possibly coming to Doty. And so I'm glad I didn't donate my $1,000 that I was considering donating to North Branch Nature Center's ECO program at Doty, because now my kid won't be at Doty. And so that's one issue. I also know that I think I'm correct in saying that Romney doesn't have an ECO program. I think they do have some sort of outdoor program that is built upon their past with North Branch ECO, but they don't have a North Branch sponsored ECO today. They have some type of volunteer parent teacher run something like ECO. So to Zach's point and Linnea's point earlier, maybe that could be a future new partnership at Romney to talk with having ECO at Romney as a tradition. And my last point is that the buses, I heard the superintendent talk about that conundrum. Personally, my child was looking forward to riding his bike to Doty next year. Now, he's not, Zach, gonna ride 6 miles uphill to Romney next year. I know I won't be able to bribe him with any amount of candy to do that. So that is a shame for me and my son. Now, the plus side is that when he gets out of school at Romney, he'll actually be able to be on time and have his baseball practice at Romney after school. So that's a pro. So those were all my concerns. To Julia's point about the contracts with pre-K, it did sound to me like those pre-K kids are now going to be custodians of Turtle Island. They're not going to be custodians of Worcester or Doty. And I know you said that they were, because you have custodial of all the pre-K kids, but I don't understand how, if Turtle Island's going to be running the pre-K, those kids are now legally a custodian, and they would have to pay tuition for the pre-K teacher at Turtle Island. So that part is fuzzy as a taxpayer and a Worcester resident, as to who is custodial of that pre-K. That wasn't clear to me. And I would, I look forward to some information on that. And yeah, I mean, that goes to the lease and the governance and the partnership part that you spoke of, Superintendent. So that's just, again, the hazard that I shared with Gillian is like, that does sound like something that's out there that will need to be decided by the board, and then will need to be decided by the town. And so I don't know why she's telling third graders tomorrow what's happening, because it doesn't sound like a done deal. But I understand she's trying to get ahead of the issue, but that third grader is going to experience that ping pong tomorrow should this whole thing blow up and not happen. So that to me is a concern as a child advocate. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple of other hands on the online. Honey.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there so late tonight. I'm sorry I missed the beginning part of the meeting. And for those who don't know me, I am Honeybee Barrett, and I am the teacher of the 5th and 6th graders at Doty right now. And I wanted to come on to say that I've advocated for years that we should lease out space to early childcare organizations. And I didn't anticipate that it would mean changes for my students and my role. And that being said, I see a lot of pros to what's coming ahead. And I think that Doty is going to be a leader in our district for collaborating and offering support for early childhood care. And I know all the students at Rumney because I used to teach them when they were preschool students and kindergarten students. And I know all the students at Doty, and they're going to be really lucky to be learning together for 5th and 6th grade. The Doty staff and the Worcester families really have welcomed me into their community in the last 3 years, and they've trusted me, and I hope that they will continue to trust me because I am just going to put my whole heart and soul into helping make this transition the best possible transition that it can be for kids. And kids are resilient, and kids are wonderful, and kids are going to take the lead of their grown-ups. And I am going to be a grown-up that listens and cares for them and their feelings and really celebrates what's to come for them. So I'm here to appreciate what's ahead, and I'm excited. And thank you for listening to my feelings about it tonight.
Thank you, Honey. I'm going to jump into Caitlin because she was not able to comment before, and then I'm going to come back to the people that were able to comment before. So, Caitlin.
Hi. So I would want to start with saying that we have space at Doty is not necessarily an entirely true statement by itself. We certainly have some space which should be explored. I don't think anybody tonight or in any of our discussions over the past year has disagreed with the fact that we need preschool care for our children in our community. And there's some space at Doty that can be utilized for this. However, loss of our math, art, music, classroom, not to mention the loss of space for our 5th and 6th grade students to benefit a private entity is not necessarily in line with the purpose and the charge of public education. I wanted to say that then further at a coffee chat with the superintendent in Middlesex that I attended, because again, I have a student at Doty and at Rumney, and I try and be in both places. A Middlesex resident suggested to you, Stephen, that we should perhaps explore funding a model where the option of funding sending our public school kids to private schools be explored. And your response was, to my understanding, that this was not public education and that this was not something that you could champion. Yet this is seemingly what the solution is for keeping our Worcester youngest students in Worcester. And I don't feel that's appropriate. I have a lot of questions as well. I would not necessarily want to send my child to public school partially and then to a private program partially. Would I be paying the same rate that I'm paying for CC at Turtle Island? These are all major questions that have a big effect on my family and our future. And saying that, you know, of course, you do keep the option of us going to any school in the district open is not really the solution that has been asked for time and time again. We've asked for our youngest to be educated within our community by the district itself and not by a private entity. And again, I'm going to echo what other people have said and question what will happen to the Doty campus itself outside of school hours. Will the community still have access to the playground? Will the community still have access to the river? That's somewhere that we go nearly constantly in the summer because we don't have those things available at our house. Will Turtle Island have to put up fencing for their requirements? Will we be welcome on the campus when their school is in session? These are things that the community needs to know and understand ahead of time. I appreciate that Turtle Island is on a really tight deadline, but we should not be putting our children that we are publicly educating, not under the bus, that's not the right phrase. Please forgive me, it's late, but we shouldn't be putting Turtle Island's timeline and need ahead of what's right for our kids. Even in last year's configuration conversations, there was a lot of talk about how things were too rushed. And that was over the course of a year. And here we are talking about essentially 2 months. That's the runaway train. I also echo, I will wrap it up here because I know it's late, the concern about going to the students tomorrow. There are so many things that have been asked by board members, by community members tonight, and we have said or heard, we don't know that yet. We don't have those details yet. We'll figure that in time. We can figure that out. My son, who's in 2nd grade now, will be in 3rd grade next year, heard me receive the letter from Gillian today explaining what was happening. And when he asked, I told him what was going on. And he said, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And those were some questions that were asked tonight. And you don't know. I don't know. Gillian doesn't know. The kids won't know. It's not fair. Kids bounce and kids are resilient, but some kids bounce back and some kids bounce lower. And that needs to be considered as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin. Noah, and then Lauren.
Thank you. I will reiterate what several people have said about sort of being cautious about what is said to children tomorrow. There are a few ideas that I don't think have been floated yet. Not all of these were mine. We sort of have a little group chat that we do during these board meetings. I don't know if this idea has been explored yet, but it's one that I'd like to put out there, which is that instead of sending the 5th and 6th grade up to Rumney, what about having them use either the Historical Society space across the street from Doty or the 2nd floor of the Worcester Town Hall right around the corner from Doty to be able, at least for a year, right? So to slow down this process so that they actually can continue to be part of Doty, also to allow the configuration committee to do its job of deciding thoughtfully how to potentially configure our district. This is, I would not call a thoughtful response, even though, again, there are a lot of aspects of it that I agree really could be positive. My encouragement would be to do it in a thoughtful way. If the Historical Society and the Town Hall were not an option, renting a pod, similar to what was used when East Montpelier was being reconstructed, would be another way of keeping the 5th and 6th grade there. And then I think also, you know, again, those questions about math instructional space, where the specials will be. Are you really going to have, you know, all of the specials in the library? This question of, has it been explored to give Turtle Island the smaller half of the building, and then having them build walls? If they don't actually need the giant classroom spaces for very small children, could they actually accommodate essentially the number of children that they need in the smaller half of the building? So these are all questions that I think need to be explored further. And I would agree that just telling the community and then telling the children, this is definitely what's happening, without having explored other possibilities that would be less disruptive to our kids, I think that would be a questionable decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Lauren?
Thanks. Sorry, I just want to get my hand down there. I have 2 comments. I guess one goes back to the end of the year calendar decision, which I guess has already been made. But I'm a public school teacher. A day that we lose in February is not made up in June. The day is lost. A day in June is a day our kids are in a school building, but it's not an educational day. And I would argue June 24th is way too late for kids to be in school. And I think I'm not throwing this out as the last day of school, but like the longer you go in June, the less purposeful those days become. And I would add that connecting to this whole discussion, the ripple of these decisions is wide. So I made a gamble. I was like, well, we may be in school that week, but we're going to make our plans because we might not be, and we need to have plans made. And so now, if it was any other year, I'd be fine with my children missing the last few days of school. But now it might be my child's last day at Doty ever. And that's a big deal. And so again, these decisions have a lot of impacts. So that's just that. And I just think that's too late to be keeping kids in school. And then to the Turtle Island discussion, I have a couple follow-up questions based on what was shared earlier. It seems like we as the district should have the ability to determine the number of Turtle Island students we will have space for. And so I guess my question is, why was it not floated, or maybe it was, and I'd like to understand why this wasn't the decision. Why was it not floated that Turtle Island used the smaller wing of the building where there are 3 classrooms? And as McKaylin suggested, an infant classroom does not need an entire space like of a kindergarten classroom, perhaps build some walls if they need separate spaces, or limit the number of Turtle Island students the Doty can handle, and retain the larger section of the school so that we have a music and art space. Anyone who's taught art on a cart, which I imagine the plan, it's not a great experience for anybody, or music on a cart or whatever it will be. And so, and keeping the 5th and 6th grade at Doty. So I'm curious as to why that was not part of the discussion tonight. It does feel like my child is a pawn in all of this. He got, we got the email, I got the letter. That's all he's been talking about. He's got his list of questions here. You can't see it, but he's ready for Gillian tomorrow. I doubt any of them will be answered. And I think over the past year, I've been very involved in all the configuration discussions, and the board kept talking about the importance of equity of student experiences in the district, that they wanted all of our students to have that same experience. Well, right now, with the board choosing to move 5th and 6th graders from Doty to Rumney every single year, this is not an impact that will just impact my student this year. It is an every year, our 5th and 6th graders from Doty will need to have this additional transition, enter a new community. As wonderful as it may be, it's still a transition, learn a whole new set of norms and people and interactions. And that is not an equitable experience. And so I'm really baffled why this is an active choice on the part of our board to offer all this space to, again, a private entity, and take, that the impact is really happening to the kids. And so I see a way that the district can still offer this pre-K space to Turtle Island and keep Doty as a whole pre-K 6 community, similar to all the other elementary schools in the district. So it really feels like this is a done deal, like it's all happened without any input from the community. And that, honestly, as I said before, feels not great as a parent of an impacted kid, regardless of all the, I get the need for childcare. I get it. I get that it's, they'll have a fine education and experience at Rumney. That's not really the point. It's really the process has felt rushed, as has been said, and not transparent. Thank you.
Thank you. Lila?
Yeah. Lila Richardson from Worcester. Again, I just wanted to clarify that when I spoke at the beginning of the meeting and said basically I could see supporting this plan, it was before I was aware that the plan now includes moving the 5-6 classroom. So I just want the board to be clear that came to me in an email that, was from somebody who had gotten the letter from Gillian at the end of the day today. And as a person who's not a parent of a kid in school, I wasn't aware of it. I'm frankly really surprised at comments from people on the board that, to the effect that we have the room to do this. I don't think you have the room to do it. creating the room by moving a classroom from Doty to Romney. And I would join with, all the other people who say, please, consider other options. It wasn't clear to me why an agreement was made with Turtle Island that this amount of space was available when it was known that the 5-6 class would have to be moved. And I'm also disappointed in the board just handling this with public comment and saying, we'll do some FAQs afterwards. I think you really should be answering questions faster than some unspecified time in the future. And there must be answers to a lot of the questions that have been raised. And I wish that the board had engaged in more of a Q&A about something this important. So I guess that's about it. I'll probably write another letter to the board
Thank you,
after.
Leila.
Some more.
Thank you for your comments. You were at the communications, I'm going to take the liberty, you were at the communications committee meeting yesterday, so I don't feel that it's a fair representation. I think our superintendent had answered the questions that we have information so far, and we'll move forward with giving more information to the community as we have it. And the only reason to create in the frequently asked questions is to make sure that everybody has the same information. We're not going to try to resolve this issue just by frequently asked questions. So don't worry, we take your point. Naomi, and then Hannah, and then we're going to move into executive session.
Yeah, hi, thanks. Naomi Heindel, I'm a Worcester resident, and my son is a first grader at Doty. I will again reiterate what folks said. I think Lauren used the word baffled. I do feel really baffled by this decision and by the incredibly quick timeline, getting that email at 4:30 this afternoon or something, and like rushing home and dealing with kids and cooking and bedtime. And I've been like putting the meeting down and picking it up and putting it down. And it seems like the decision is made, but I don't quite understand how the board is prioritizing the timeline and the needs of a private entity over our own public school and our own public school kids. You keep talking about the quick timeline, like that's Turtle Island's timeline. That's not our timeline. We know that we want to move slower with these conversations. We learned that last year. And it seems, really appalling to me that we would like cut the school in half and really do some big restructuring to the inside, the outside, the scheduling, the way things are offered, in order to accommodate this private entity. Granted, I support what the private entity does. We need early childhood care in our region of the state. But I'm not sure that this is the way to do it. So I have a lot of questions about what things will look like inside the school. Loss of the art and music room. Where's that going to happen? Especially after last year, oh my gosh, it was on and on and on about the allied arts and how we need to increase them. And now we're going to cut out the room where those things happen. The specialized math instruction where the groups break down by grade. It's one of my son's favorite part of the day is doing math. Where is that going to happen? And then outside, I'm also very curious to know how Turtle Island is a licensed daycare. They have very, very specific licensing requirements for play structures and playgrounds and fencing and such. So what will that look like? What is parking lot and pickup and drop off going to look like? What is traffic flow going to look like? Talked about some maybe shared use of the gym or scheduling, questions about that. And I think I just have questions about the governance of this. Like, this is a public-private partnership, which is super, super complicated, not unheard of, and could be really exciting in a more thoughtful way. But like, has the board met with the board of the Turtle Island nonprofit? Are you having those governance conversations? What are all the different terms of the lease going to be? Who's going to be in charge of maintenance? Turtle Island has been renting their space for decades, and I don't want to share too much on that side, but there's certainly sort of a second side to that story. And I think as stewards of public property, Doty School. We need to understand what the maintenance agreements are going to look like and what's going to happen if those are not kept up. So there's just a ton of questions. This feels super hurried, and I also don't understand why the board is so willing to do this. You say this is a great way to keep the school alive, but you also say that none of you are right now looking to close the school. So why are we doing this at a moment when closing the school is not actually on the table? I don't think you're saying this is a financial thing. We haven't heard what the rent's going to be. So I am totally baffled by this and pretty appalled that you're considering it or have decided to do it.
Thank you. Hannah?
Hi there. I'm Hannah Brown. I'm from Middlesex. I'm gonna leave my video off. Hopefully my internet works better that way. Yeah, I just wanna really double down on what the previous speaker said. At first, this sounds really exciting in a lot of ways, but I agree with Lauren. This is not it's not an equitable experience for Doty. And I have a 2-year-old and I've been on wait lists for 2.5 years for daycare. So I get that. And it's a desperate need, but prioritizing a private entity as desperately as we need that entity at the expense of one community out of 5 is that I think that's way too much. And I get the pros. I absolutely get that the bigger classrooms, or birth to pre-K is exciting, but the way you're doing it is, I think, is too fast and not thoughtful enough. I also think that you need to think a lot harder about the optics of moving very fast to allow space for a private entity. We are in a situation right now, nationally and statewide, of the divide between private and public education. And we need to think really hard about this decision. I also think that the board needs to think really hard about how fast private entities can change. Leadership can change extremely fast, and the quality of programs can change extremely fast. And I am very wary of my tax dollars going to being a landlord for a private entity that, even if it's amazing right now, there is no guarantee or governance of the nitty-gritty decisions that are being made about the care of children. So I'm thinking legally and all of those things. So I think that if this change is made, and I think it could be exciting, it could happen, but it shouldn't be on Doty's shoulders. It should come at the same time as we move all the 6th graders to U32. So every school has to make a change. It shouldn't be that Doty is the only school that has music on a cart and art on a cart. That doesn't work. And my kids aren't at Doty, and that doesn't work for me. I like thinking about the town hall or the historical society, but if you're doing it, and if we're this agile, then we should be this agile and ask for change from every school, not just Doty. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. I see that Allison has her hand up too, and then for real, we're going to move into executive session.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Allison.
Allison Burns, live in East Montpelier, and I teach at U32 math. And I just want to reiterate, I get that this is super complicated and that the shift for 5th and 6th graders is huge and it's not a big ask. And I really appreciate that you all are considering this. Again, we have no backup for childcare. I don't know how I'll continue to teach without Turtle Island staying open. And I know that people are suggesting other options, and it's just very complex getting a childcare center licensed. And a lot of those places are not options for the fall, or, not to mention that we're closing June 1st. And so I don't know what that's going to look like for us, but at least, maybe there's long-term options that are different from this plan, but right now I think we have no options for next year. And that's 70 children that won't have childcare. And a lot of people have brought up like privatizing, you know, things. And obviously, like I'm a public school teacher. Our oldest is in kindergarten at EMES and we love it. And there are no public options for our 1-year-old. So I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. And we appreciate that you all are considering this. And I know it's complicated and complex and it's heavy. And like Stephen brought up earlier, both sides are experiencing grief. I wish we could stay where we are. It's going to be sad to lose that spot, but ultimately we need childcare. Like I need to be able to have a safe spot for my 1-year-old to go, or I can't come to my job and teach. So thank you for considering.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you, everybody, for their comments. I just also want to mention that we do the private and public partnership. We already have 9 students that take advantage of Act 166 that go to Turtle Island. So we already have a partnership in a way. They receive about, $25,000 from us as it is right now, from public funds. Okay. Let's move in. I'm looking for a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of residency.
I move that we go into executive session for the purposes of residency and invite Stephen Dellinger-Pate. and
Thank
anyone
you.
else. No.
Second by Ursula. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I move that we come out of executive session.
Second,
Okay.
I move that we accept the administration's recommendation regarding the student residency request.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. Do you have that, Diane? 1 second. You got it?
She's shaking her head, yes.
Okay. Right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries for both. Yeah.
Thank you, board.
Thank you. Okay. Daniel,
I'll second, whatever I'm trying to do.
okay. And Diane, you have your hand up?
Yeah, so I got that Daniel moved it. Who seconded it? I'm sorry.
Ursula.
Okay.
Yeah. And you got the getting out of executive session too? Okay, thank you. And all ayes, thanks. And the motion to adjourn too.